Well, hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from around the world. I'm Timothy Charles Castleberry, and this is the prayer call. Welcome. Glad to have each and every one of you. Sorry we had to reschedule at the last minute last night, so for the inconvenience, I apologize. Seems like it might have actually worked out better for some of you guys. Sophia's mom was a little ill, and she had to go to the doctor early this morning, and I wanted to make sure she got some restful sleep, so I didn't want to. She was up right before I started and not feeling well, so I helped her back to bed and keep her in your prayers, I guess. But she's a little under the weather, and I just moved it to tonight, so no harm, no foul. But yeah, so I got a little ambitious. I was real excited to do the prayer call, and I'm not feeling it tonight. So usually when I don't feel it, some of have the best ones from what I've noticed, and apologize for the lag ahead of time. And I hit the refresh like 20 times to get ahead of the curve, I guess. But I've got it set up. The title is "This Means War." Yeah, so tonight's title is "This Means War," and it's basically I wanted to try and cover Matthew 23 and 24. So we're going to dig in and get started and get as far as we can. Matthew 24, I think, is my favorite chapter in the entire Bible. And looks like we're having some issues again. This is weird. As much as I could tell, I went back last time and I didn't find any audio issues. So there might be audio issues. I didn't listen to the whole live stream all over again, but I didn't hear any audio issues. A lot of people were commenting about having audio issues last time. And I had said that after it's uploaded, after the archive is uploaded, if there's audio issues on the archived copy version, then you'll know it was on my end. And since I didn't hear any on the recording, makes me feel like it's in between or on y'all's individual levels on y'all's end. I'm not like a tech guru, so I can't tell you all the ins and outs of what I can know, but it's really weird. From my experience, if audio problems are on my end, it'll be on the recording. If audio problems are not in the recording, then it's either in between the transmission or it's on your end, on the receiver end. So, okay, so some of y'all are saying it sounds pretty clear, so that's really good. Refresh is our best friend, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, anyways, I titled this episode, This Means War, and Matthew chapter 24 is a chapter. It's about wars and rumors of wars. Basically, Jesus gives the laundry list about what has to happen in the end times before he can return. So he kind of gives the litmus test of what to keep an eye out for and what you can definitely expect, but right, precipitating his return, right, basically. And so 23 picks up where we left off in 22 and rolls right into 24, and 24 rolls into 25. So yeah, so usually I read 24 and 25 together, but I'm thinking 23 and 24 might work. So it's too much scripture to fit into the video description box like I usually do. I do have the links to chapter 23 and 24 if y'all want to go follow along over there. I've got all the music for tonight already in the video description box if you want links to the channels and the content creators. It should be pretty cool. So sometimes I get lazy and forget to put those links in the video description box after the fact, but try to honor and respect everybody who allows me to have the privilege to use their music, and I do appreciate that opportunity. So that's the agenda for tonight. We're going to try to cover 23 and 24. We'll see how long it takes to get through 23 and how we're feeling it. I don't want to skimp on 24. So if we have to do 24 and 25 next time, and by next time I don't mean next week, because what's interesting is I skipped Genesis last time, so we've done quite a bit in Matthew and got ahead. So we did 2 chapters in a row from Matthew. I didn't realize that till after the fact, and no one called me out on it, which is good. Seems like no one's paying attention where we're supposed to be, but it doesn't matter. I like to keep things open-ended. So anyways, I figured since we were already rolling through Matthew and it's getting so close to Jesus's last days alive, that it would be better to just stick with it and keep it rolling. So we'll just play things by ear. I'm not real concerned about sticking to a regimen or anything like that, but yeah, exactly. Satirical Rabbit asks, speaking of war, thoughts on North Korea, everyone in the chat. I'll give you some thoughts I have about North Korea after we pray in here in just a minute. But yeah, that's an interesting situation. It's been heating up for a couple decades. And I will say hi to everybody too. So let me go ahead and pray us in, and then we'll get this night started. So Heavenly Father, we just come to you in prayer tonight to open ourselves and our hearts to you, to open our minds, to be open to changing them if we're decided, or if we have our minds made up. God, let's just open our minds to your truth and to receiving it. So we just pray to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. We pray for a blessing over tonight as we commit and dedicate this time to you, Father. We just ask for you to reveal your truth to us, to spend time with us. And as we're seeking you, God, we just ask that you reveal yourself tonight. Let us experience your truth and your grace and your mercy. And we thank you for your son, Jesus, who you sent to show us the way. We just pray that we get all the wisdom that we can from his words tonight. And God, help us to understand what it is that you're saying, not what it is that we want to hear in the scriptures. But if there is a special word or message for us, God, we just ask that you make it clear. And that way we don't doubt that we can be assured and have the confirmation that we need to move forward with confidence in the Spirit. So tonight, God, we just invite your Son to come into our hearts and sup with us. We invite you as our Father to spend quality time with us in your presence. And we just ask your Holy Spirit to come guide and teach us tonight in your word. And in Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right, everybody. I'm going to hit refresh myself one time, and that'll update the chat, and I'll say hi to everybody. And then we'll go ahead and get started. So let me go ahead and pull up this. Actually, hey, I've provided myself the links, which makes it easy for me even. There we go. Mine seems to be running a little slow. It's why I took a extra time tonight to reboot it. Sometimes that seems to make it run a little faster. But everything looks good to go. So I want to say howdy to Brian. Hey, Brian, what's going on? I did catch up on some of the emails, but not all of them. Sorry about that. I don't want you to feel like I'm leaving you hanging. But I know there is a lot of content and information. And I do like your style, bro. I just had to say. And I'll shoot you an email back here soon to let you know what I think. So, hey Juan, what's up? Run, rabbit, run! And hi Michelle, send Jim my love. I'm really glad to see you. Awesome glamour shot too, by the way. Sophia showed me today. It was cool. So I'll send her your love. And hey Adam, what's going on, buddy? And you know, one interesting thing I found out about the tribe of Dan and the Danites and everything. Uh, um, if you research, I think one of their logos or symbols that represents the tribe is the bumblebee. In symbolism, you see a particular stylized type of bumblebee kind of logo or design, and royalty, French royalty in particular. Um, it's the same logo that they have. I think it's for Patron tequila. I think that's what it is. But there's an alcohol that has the same bee logo, and it's a real weird thing. But if you study into it, if you get down to the bottom line, one of the main symbols that the bee stands for is the tribe of Dan. Now, I find that interesting because of the hive mind and all that kind of stuff. So that was an interesting rabbit trail to go down there. But yeah, studying the Danites is pretty interesting. I can't remember. I heard, I couldn't quote scripture or prove it with scripture, but I'm pretty sure I remember at one point believing that the Antichrist is supposed to come out of the tribe of Dan. But I can't confirm that. I'd have to go back and reassess my position on it. But it was very interesting research into the tribe of Dan. So anyways, it's a good, interesting conversation y'all had going in the chat there. So let's see. Howdy, Tina. Eat the food. Hey, Jade, I hope you did enjoy your day off and got to spend some time with Serge. Howdy to you guys. Don't party too hard without me. And let's see. Good eye, mate. Hi, Christine. What's going on? I'm glad. Oh, hopefully it's working better. I'm gonna have to get your side to motor through it. I'm glad to see you, Christine. I hope the legs mending mo better. I know those things take a long time, but it's been a while. So, hey, Dominic, what's going on? Sorry to bust out your eardrums with the music today. Hey, Ramses, glad to see you, buddy. Ram Jam's in the house. Vehicles of Peace, limited edition. I like that name because it's like Vehicles of Peace. We need as many as we can get, but there's only a limited edition. The power of Christ compels you. Hey, if I ever hear those words in that order, I can't help but to think of the movie Exorcist. Hey, dog streaming, what's going on? Interesting picture. Welcome. Welcome to everybody that's here. I think I'm almost caught up. Hey, dog, what's going on, dog? What up, dog? Asked if I was, if I believe in flat Earth, Yeah, I've talked a little bit about my thoughts on flat Earth. I intend on making a video at some point here. I don't know. I've got a million videos I intend on making, but flat Earth is an interesting topic for sure. I'm on the fence about it, so I'm not for or against, but I probably lean more towards for than more towards against. But growing up studying astronomy and stuff like that, and being a big sci-fi person, it's a hard sell for me. Even the Bible has a lot of scripture, but it's a hard sell for me. So I'm familiar with a lot of the flat Earth information, but I've not kept up with it, or I haven't been on the bandwagon. I will say I started researching flat Earth before Rob Skiba, so I've been interested in the concept or ideas of it, but I did think it was pretty ridiculous at first. I'm usually pretty open-minded to possibilities, and flat Earth just didn't seem like a viable option or a realistic possibility. But that's based on my worldview, and my worldview is somewhat tainted from my youth. So I don't like the word flat Earth because the Earth is clearly not flat. I mean, if there's mountains and valleys, then it's not flat. But that's just kind of like the label that has stuck with that genre. And I think it's unfortunate because what good credible argument that you do have for a flat Earth model or concept is deteriorated by the lack of ability to present the case, or I mean, just the title itself, flat Earth, lends itself to people scoffing. So the Earth is not flat. I mean, that's provable. But I like to use the term planar Earth because it's a plane, right? And no matter which way you chalk it up, that can't be refuted. We live on a plane of existence. Rather, that plane is a sphere or a globe or flat or planar, which is a better term for something that's flat because it's a plane that can go up and down. Like it can have variables. Flat cannot. Flat has to be flat. So it's I mean it's really a semantics, but I think since the devil's in the details, details are very important. So when it comes to flat Earth, there's a lot to discuss about it, and I hear good arguments on both sides. I'll put it that way. And it seems like both sides are pretty militant to defend what it is they believe once they make their mind up on one side or the other. I have seen people on flat Earth get religious about flat Earth that are not Christian, um, to the point where they try and proselytize flat Earth. But if you try and throw a little Jesus or the creator who created that flat Earth, they're not so keen on that aspect of the argument. So that's a kind of a flag for me personally. Um, a lot of the people that are into flat Earth aren't very nice. It's like, oh, I found out this new truth that's been there the whole time, right in my face. But hey, if you don't believe what I just found out, you're wrong. I'm right. Boo boo. Now it gets old, but that's could be said for most denominations of Christianity and blah 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 blah. Everybody wants to be right. Nobody ever wants to be wrong. What else is new, right? Nothing new under the sun. Flat Earth to me, I think one of the biggest telltale signs, if you were to use something from the dark side to validate it, would be the square and compass logo for the Freemasons. Squaring the circle is an interesting concept, or circling the square. I can't remember the terminology they use, but the square and the compass, one makes a circle, one makes a square. Um, and might be going on a limb to interpret that symbol that way, but it makes perfect sense. Four corners of the earth, and then the circle of the earth. There's multiple ways the earth is referenced in the scriptures, and they claim to be holding the biggest secrets. I've talked to some of them, and that's the whole rationale behind why they have a secret society and a code of secrecy, is that they have truth that if the world knew about it, it would become unraveled. I literally had a Freemason guy tell me in prison who seemed like he was legitimate, not one of the kind of, hey, I'm this degree Mason, blah, 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 look at me. This guy seemed for real, and he thought I was a Freemason too. Is the only reason he talked to me about it. Once he found out I wasn't, he got real different. I'll just put it that way. And later on, after we maintained somewhat of an acquaintanceship, if that's even a word, we were talking about the Bible and stuff, and brought up the God's truth is free, and God's not about keeping secrets. He wants you to freely share his truth with everybody. And not all truth is for everybody. I get that, right? But for the essence of the conversation, what I was saying was very accurate. And so it's like having a secret society, excuse me, having a secret society and an oath that you take with brotherhood, literally to the pledge of death. Like, I will keep this secret to my very death. And if I break the secret, then I shall be killed. Right? I mean, that's doesn't sound like a godly kind of oath when you're making it amongst yourselves with men. Right? And so, anyways, I just asked this dude, I was like, God gives his truth out free. Y'all are hiding y'all's truth. Why are y'all special and can reserve this truth for you, which is so universally important? He literally said, if the world found out about the things that we know, society would collapse, right? And it would be chaos. And like, to me, I'm just thinking, like, what kind of earth-shattering kaboom kind of knowledge could you have really that would shatter everything? And I could only think of a couple, like, really big deals like that. And one of them was alien stuff, and he and I did talk about extraterrestrial or alien kind of things for a while, and that turned into interdimensional, that turned into demon talk. But um, after a while later, when I started thinking about it, square and the compass, it makes sense that they would sit there and flaunt a flat Earth right in your face, and then basically be helpful behind the scenes in getting a heliocentric model put forth, and blah 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 blah. Go on and on and on. I don't want to talk your ear off about flat Earth because I don't want to go there tonight, but I wanted to answer, and a lot of people have asked me that, and I don't usually answer very often, so I figured now would be a good time to kind of address it. But hey, what are the possibilities? You know, I don't know. To me, it's all of these ancient mythologies and religions, a lot of the pagan religions, when you put their model cosmology or whatever, um, their models seem to fit a planet Earth or something along those lines. And so there's something more to it than just a clear cut, yes, the Earth is a globe or a sphere. And now there's some interest. Somebody in the chat asked about the eclipse too. What's the big deal about it? And well, I'd seen people using the eclipse to prove flat Earth also. So at some point, I would like to get some physicist or some, like, somebody who does this for a living and needs it to make their living. I'd like to have one of those people debate one of these top flat earthers, and then have them have, like, I've never heard anybody say, well, I haven't heard about that. Wow, that really makes me rethink my whole position. I've never heard anybody on either side really do that. And so, yeah, I mean, there's technical term. I mean, it's a battle of semantics, I think, with flat Earth. But I've got some really weird concepts. Like, what if it's a cylinder, actually? What if our spatial dimension is actually a cylinder? So it could be flat and a sphere at the same time. I guess I don't know. It's just I've got some weird ideas, and I'll keep them to myself till I'm ready to discuss. But thanks for asking. Yeah, so I'd rather be on the fence, not making my mind up yet. But I'll say, when I went to debunk it, because that was my whole set about flat Earth, I thought it was ridiculous, and I went to debunk it, and I spent about 3 days, not full days all day every day, but I spent about 3 days trying to debunk it in the middle of two other big projects, and I was like, whoa, ain't nobody got time for that. This rabbit hole's a little deeper, and I think I will avoid this quagmire. Just keep on doing what God's got me doing right now. I saw a lot of people picking up the flat Earth topic of interest and moving that direction. I kind of saw the trend coming before it hit YouTube as big as it did, but it's not a new thing either, by the way. There used to be a whole society of people believing this. Wonder where they all went, underground maybe, I don't know, but yeah, total brain fart, lost my train of thought, but yeah. I don't know. That's all I have to say about that. Hey, Colin, what's up, buddy? Oh, yeah. It's not as clear cut as I thought, and I'm a pretty science-minded person. So when I went into it, it was like, whoa. And second day, I was a lot more humbling to myself because I was full of pride when I jumped into it. When I put my name in the hat. I was ready to knock this thing out really quick, and not the case, right? And so the more time I spent on it, the more I realized I didn't have the time for it. I said I'd come back to it. By the time I came back to it, you know, if you make a flat Earth video, you can have 100,000 subscribers overnight. I'm like, oh, okay, wow, I see how this is gonna work. So I just kind of let everybody take that train and go full steam ahead. I figured I'd wait. Uh, you know, what do they say? The second rat gets the cheese, or the second mouse gets the cheese. I didn't want to necessarily jump on that bandwagon. A lot of people call flat Earth a psyop. If you don't know what psyop means, it means psychological operation. It's an abbreviation. Um, a lot of people say it's a psyop, right? And to me, what is or is not a psyop is debatable, and how you use that term and reference an issue or an event as being a psyop or not, that's semantics once again. Um, but usually when things trend, it trends for a reason. Either it's legitimate or it's manufactured. And I usually take time to assess if I believe it's a genuine movement worth the time to spend engaging it, or if it's manufactured and has a purpose, Hegelian style, right? A lot of people jump on a bandwagon because they have an emotional response. And that's what they use often to manipulate your actions. So be careful about jumping on bandwagons. That's all I'll say. So doesn't mean you shouldn't get on the bandwagon either, though, right? You got to do what's best for you. And for me, patience and um, just waiting, I think, is important. Not to make up your mind too quickly. And my mind was made up to start out with, and I've opened my mind to being open to change when I wasn't to start out with. So I'm on a slow simmer, getting some flavor. Just put it that way. Um, no, it's all right. Satirical Rabbit, Mr. Gunk, I have never heard of, and I might have to check his channel out. Sounds interesting. Turtle Earth, yeah. I actually had a debate with somebody one time, a non-believer, and they were like, "Oh yeah, some people believe we live on the back of a turtle." I'm like, show me these people that believe that, please, and then we'll further this line of discussion. If you think people believe that, show me one, and then let me talk to them. Otherwise, I don't think that's valid for you to use for your argument. If you can draw from the people who used to believe that, I think that makes a better argument than say people do believe this. I don't know anybody that believes we live on the back of a turtle, but it was one of the ideas back in the day. How does night and day separate with flat Earth? It's an interesting question. I'm not the guy to answer it, but basically, I think it's like the sun moves around, not us. And so when the sun's smaller than they say that it is, so if it's smaller and over there, we can't see it from over here. That's the layman's shorthand of the answer to that question. If you see the visual aid, it makes a little bit more sense, but I've seen some people use examples from their observation that don't match that model. So that's one of those things, like I said, it's not quite as solid as a lot of people would like to think on both sides. But hey, let's let the discussion continue and see where it goes. That's what I say. I just wish there was more people in the field of science that were addressing this. Like I've got a teacher I respect a lot, my old health teacher. He's real. He was my soccer coach. He's the guy from my testimony I talked about. Real big on health and nutrition and science. I mean, real big on it. And he laughs at the flat Earth, like, and puts memes up about it. But he's also a high school teacher, so he hears everything come through, and he doesn't take it serious at all. And he's somebody who actually thought about going privately to and asking about it. I'm glad I waited and watched Facebook, because now I think he would have probably laughed at me or something just for asking. But there are a few things where I would like someone who I trust their perspective from a science perspective. I'd like to get their take on it. I've got one friend actually who gave me a good explanation for the shadow on the moon. And I always said as soon as I find out about the shadow, then I will move forward with making my mind up. and he gave me a viable explanation from a non-flat Earth perspective, and I respected it, but I didn't agree with it. But it was in my mind like 20% possible what he was saying, adding up completely. But anyways, moving on. Hey Gerard, what's going on, buddy? Glad to see you. Hey Jennifer, still keeping my thoughts out for Perry, and we'll pray for your mom's situation too. So glad to see you though. And hey Victoria, long time no see. Yeah, exactly. God created the earth 4 days before the sun, and eventually, at some point, Jesus will be the light of the world too. So I don't know if God's going to recreate the sun or not, but that's an interesting thought. Let's see here. Okay, so I'm going to try and blow through the rest of here. I think I've said hi to everybody, but I can't remember. Hey, Colin, what's going on, buddy? Glad to see you. See Red Dog, what's up, Red? Glad to see you, buddy. And we got John, what's up, John Moscato? Hey, Ed Brooks. And hey, Wilson's in the house. Hey, Chrissy, what's going on? Glad to see you. The oldest flat earther on the planet. Like, oldest as in you're the oldest now, or oldest hasn't been into it the longest? EC Tech Treasures, what's going on? Seems like it's been a minute. Feels like it. I already said hi to Franco. Okay. Hey, Mia, what's going on? I'm glad to see you. Really glad to see you. Hope everything is going well for you guys. And yeah, you got groups within groups running other groups, right? Telling those groups what to do. It's really weird. Copernicus was the first Freemason. I'd have a hard time believing that. They claim their stuff goes back way before Copernicus, like to Egypt and King Solomon and stuff. So I don't know. Freemasonry is an interesting thing to study in and of itself. I actually have a documentary. I think it's called The Widow's Son or Legend of the Craft, something like that. But it's a mirrored video, and I spent a lot of time making sure that I got all of the links, I think, in the or the citations in the video description box, because they had it originally, but it was a real difficult. You couldn't just copy and paste it. Basically, it was real hard to do, and it's the most. I don't know. They use all of the Freemason sources, so it's like straight from the horse's mouth, kind of. It's not one of those conspiracy theory videos. It's like all straight up conspiracy facts. And well, I would much rather deal with facts than theory, to be honest. And that's one of those ones. When I saw that documentary, it blew my mind. It's not that long either, but it talks about Tubal Cain and the story of Hiram Abiff, which is really interesting. And you want to get some deep insights about Freemasons from their own sources, go to check that video out if you're interested. Hey, Forrest Monk, what's going on? Well, the Earth being round, I don't really think is part of the debate, because the circle's round. The difference between a circle and a sphere, I guess, but it's once again goes down to semantics. Yeah, Scrawny to Brawny probably had one of the best flat Earth videos I saw. If y'all don't know him, I've got him as one of my featured channels. You can check out. I've got like a hot button on the homepage of YouTube to check out, because a lot of his decoding is fantastic. Let's see. Yeah. Ed. Hey, Ed, by the way, if I hadn't said hi already, I think I did, but believes that it's a psyop to divide us, and that's possible. We already divided anyway, so not like we need any new good reasons to be divided as you know, humanity in general. But Jennifer said flat Earth can be too much of a distraction for many people, and I agree with that. But flat Earth can also be something that brings non-believers into the realm of, you know, looking into the possibilities. I think that as you see, we've been lied to about so many things. Once you find out how much of a lie that's the way science has been presented to us, a lot of the information has been presented to us in science in a skewed way to get us to believe a particular pattern of thinking. And at that point, when you have to unravel the things that you believed that now you know aren't believable or were lies straight up, at that point you begin to doubt and question everything. And so, if flat Earth is an area to breach the lie, then once you find out that you might have been lied to about this, that, or the other, NASA is a great example. Rather you believe in flat Earth or not, NASA is a bunch of, I wouldn't just say NASA as a whole, right? Because not everybody at NASA is probably a liar. There's probably a lot of really smart, nerdy people that are there thinking they're changing the world or something, that are just compartmentalized to where they don't see the forest from the trees. That's what I would believe. But NASA as an organization has a lot of money, and I mean, they get a lot of money. And I used to want to be an astronaut kind of thing at one point, considering. And like that's the place where you go do that. So I could see a lot of people are blinded by their dreams, I think, and thoughts for a better future, that kind of stuff, good intentions. So when it gets down to it, I think like I don't like using blanket statements like NASA is liars, right? Those NAS holes over there, blah blah blah. I don't like going that route because it throws the baby out with the bathwater. You're talking trash about maybe some good people that could make a difference there for the better by throwing them in with the bunch of bad guys. Then I wouldn't want to be too helpful if you made me out like that. So. But the organization, like it's hard to believe anything I hear from NASA. I mean, and the irony is I will quote the NASA website sometimes to prove chemtrails because they talk about persistent contrails on their website, which has the same problems long term as global warming and geoengineering. And they're saying that it's not. They're saying there's no such thing as chemtrails on one hand, and then they're sitting there talking about chemtrails, just calling them persistent condensation trails. So once again, it boils down to semantics. So I like to use NASA sometimes to cherry pick when it suits me, but all in all, I don't trust them as a viable source of information. But who am I, right? It's definitely, I think, if you focus more on the lie than the truth, that could be a problem. And at the end of the day, I don't know. I think that it's important more to some people than others, and it's more relevant to some people's walks than others. But yeah, I don't know. Where is the curvature? That's all I can say. That's my biggest things for a long time. I've been saying I don't care, right? But I have had one of the smartest non-believers I've ever known in my life get the most interested in God and the Bible and the possibility of it all being true based on flat Earth, because he did the same thing I did, and he's a physicist. So like he he went out of his way to go try and disprove it because some guy he wanted to show up, or some guy's dad actually, and well, as it turns out, he went through the same rabbit hole process I did, and then came to me for the truth. And I'm like, dude, I don't care about flat Earth. He's like, well, you should. It's in the Bible. And it's like, now I'm being a bad Christian because I don't believe in flat Earth, and I'm not preaching flat Earth to him, right? Oh, cool. Ed Brooks said, I would like to see that, Ed, actually, because when I was on the airplane flying, I saw zero uh, for myself, but I've heard other people. I've known a lot of pilots when I was in AA after prison as a condition of my parole is to go to Alcoholics Anonymous twice a week. And oh man, met some great people, had some good experiences, but not a fan of that. But yeah, so anyways, it was right by DFW International Airport, and a lot of pilots that drink or have issues go to AA. So I was able to talk to quite a few of them personally, privately. And I was more interested to find out about chemtrails and flat Earth, so I really wasn't probing them about flat Earth much. But uh, pilots are people that have their minds made up really hard too, hardcore also. But it's a real, both of those are real weird topics to bring up with people that should know but probably don't. Puts them in a weird spot, right? Okay, so I guess tonight we're just gonna read the two chapters. I'm feeling like we're having more fun talking around flat Earth instead of getting straight to it. Yeah, naming your dog NASA. I'd say that's a fanboy right there. um, Buffering. Well, that's really weird. Like I've got the bandwidth set to the lowest setting. It should be giving you the least amount of information coming across. So I don't know why you'd be having buffering problems. I don't have video on. Might try changing your video quality settings to the lowest um, setting. That sometimes has helped some people. So might give that a try, buddy. Yeah, that's true. John says the internet used to be such a great tool for searching for truth, and now it's filled with so much garbage and disinformation. I would say that's the truth. Is if you have that much access free to open information, the only way you can get in the way of that is oh, cool. Glad to hear your connection's better now. Hey, Reaper, what's up, buddy? Long time no see, man. I'm glad that you're here. Been thinking about you actually. Real happy to see you, man. Hope you've been doing better. um, wow, that's really weird. It's I've Yeah, it's YouTube messing with me basically. I call it getting scroogled. Um, it happens here a lot. So, hey, Alice, better late than never. We actually haven't really gotten started yet, so that's really cool. You got to talk to your coworkers. Um, so yeah, Reaper kind of threw me off my game there. I was happy to see him. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I've got my bandwidth and everything to the lowest. It should be coming through to the best of my ability, the best I can get it across to you, without having my own encoder and stuff. But I've got a feeling that they could still mess with that, probably even worse. But yeah, well, they say pain is weakness leaving the body. I think that's Rocky 3. I think, but hang in there, buddy. And hit me up on Hangouts. I'm in Sweden, so that'll be the only way I'll be able to get in touch with you. But I would like to catch up and see how you're doing, bro. Um, oh, that's what I was saying. When you have that much access to free information, the only way to cloud that information is to flood it with misinformation or disinformation, right? I think the problem is that anybody can just go make a website about anything and put whatever they want out there, whether it's real or not, and that creates quite a problem for being able to find legitimacy. And I see this often, especially by way of memes, right? So I see a lot of memes these days, and they're using quotes in a picture, right? And it's real effective and it's moving. Yeah, or I said awesome. I said um, often the quotes aren't accurate, right? And nobody does any fact checking anymore, and everybody just takes somebody's word for it or a meme for it, right? And I thought it was really weird because it's just one example. There was a Donald Trump meme that's been going around for a couple years now, and of course it went around when Trump was talking about politics, and then it went around in the election cycle pretty close to, well, pretty much during the whole Hillary thing. And what I thought was real weird about it was I believed it at first because it seems like something he would say. And it's a quote that says, "Yeah, if I ever ran for president, I would run Republican and go on Fox News and say whatever I wanted because they're stupid and they would believe me." And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that he's a Democrat, which he's not, but he's been friends with the Clintons for a long time behind the scenes. So a lot of people have made all these connections, right? And they're all the same puppets, just different suits, blah, blah, blah. Uh, in this example, though, I was like, well, yeah, that sounds like what Donald Trump would say, and it sounds like strategy that's not all that inaccurate. And but name calling's kind of shisty, but he does that. I've seen the way he's talked to and about ladies, and I mean, guy's just an odd dude, right? That's my nice way of putting it. But when I read the quote, I was like, oh yeah, that seems pretty fitting, and it looks like 1980s Wall Street kind of photo. And I remember the next time around, I knew more about Donald Trump and his views politically, and I kind of respected him a little bit more for not that I agreed with him, but somebody who believes something enough and is willing to put their money where their mouth is and then actually go and do it. You got to respect that even if you don't agree with them. And it's not like he had a lot of help in the way that a lot of these people get shoot into their political positions. Um, but a lot of it was based off of his public image, right? Which has never been the greatest. But anyways, when I actually did the legwork to look into this quote, I looked at the quote and he didn't ever say that ever, right? And the pictures from Oprah Winfrey interview he did on her show in the 80s. He had come out with a book called Art of the Deal, which is like Art of War, but for business, for making deals. And it's supposed to be a really good book, actually. And anyways, he that year when he came out with the book, did the Oprah interview and had two. One was Newsweek, I forget the other publication, but he was in two different publications, and they basically cut and spliced part of this comment here, part of that comment there, mix it all together, shake it around, not stir it, and then serve it back up as some, quote that sounds like something he'd say. And when I did the research, he didn't say. I read both of the quotes that they drew from to make that slander. It's basically what it is. And when I looked that up, he did not even get anywhere close to saying anything like what was in the quote. And on top of that, the Oprah interview, I listened to the whole interview, and what he said in the interview had nothing to do with the quote. And I found it to be real humbling, actually, and kind of an insight into the man. And this is in the 80s, and he wasn't as rich then as he is now. And he was basically, Oprah asked him, hey, would you ever consider running for president? And this was what he was probably at the height of his popularity when not everybody loved him, but it wasn't you either love him or hate him back then. It was like, well, even if you hate him, he still has some qualities you could admire, right? Back then, he was at the top of the top. And so when she's asking him, this would have been the time where he could run for president, and it wouldn't really be. I mean, back then you had actual politicians running for politics, but it was a different time back then. All I'm saying is that if he had, what do you call it? The impression that people like what reputation. If he had the reputation now when he ran for president that he had back then during this interview, man, there would have been no chance for Hillary whatsoever. So, the fact it was so close this time, and it really wasn't that close. But anyways, long story longer, what he had said, Oprah asked, would you ever consider being president? And he said, no, I have no interest in being president. And she'd be like, yeah, it'd be a big pay cut, wouldn't it? And he's like, yeah, significant. And then he's like, well, actually, if I saw my country going in a bad direction, and if I saw my country headed for something, then yeah, if I had the opportunity to try it out or to throw my name in the hat, if I, as an American, saw my country going in a bad direction, and I had the ability to step in the role and do something to make a difference or to stop us heading in a bad direction, then yeah, I would consider being president. So for him to just say that to me, I really respect that. Um, no, I don't want to be president. I have no desire to be president, and no, I would not make enough money being president. But if worse came to worse and our country started turning to crap, then yeah, I'll step in there and maybe give it a try. Hey, our country's going a bad direction. Hey, he threw his name in the hat. Hey, he stepped in there. He's giving it a try. Do or do not. There is no try, though, so we'll see how it goes. Hey, Josh, what's up, buddy? I'm glad that you stopped in. I'm glad to see you. And hey, Bridget, glad to see you also. Always a pleasure. Send my love to your little one. She might be here, actually, listening. Howdy. Yeah, business as usual. What a complex. Um, yeah, I think I did. I saw where they were. I don't know. It's all right. I'm gonna take a moment just to collect myself and to clear my mind, and we're gonna at least read chapter 23. I'm thinking about saving 24 now since we haven't got started yet, and it's a lot of scripture. I think I'm gonna save Matthew 24 and 25 to put together. So yeah, Timmy for president 2020, man. Just pencil me in, and if I get enough votes, I'll be the president, even if I don't qualify. I think that'd be cool. I would, man, I don't know. I actually thought about wanting to be president when I was younger. And then when I made a big mistake in my life at one point, that was my first thought. I was like, oh, great, man. After this, I'll never be president. Literally ran through my mind. But okay, so that's that. We'll see. Timmy 2020. That sounds like a pretty cool campaign slogan. Change you can believe in, right? Um, yes, we do, Mia, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. It's I've actually heard from a couple people that have gone into politics and tried to make a change from the bottom up, which is the way our political system is supposed to operate, from the bottom up, not the top down. And anyone and everyone I've known that's ever gone into politics, um, they've all said that once you get in far enough or high enough, that at some point you, as a good, honest person with ethics, can't move forward or make effective change in the system because it takes too long for the system to respond. And they have it structured that way on purpose. So you can make a change, but before the change can actually come into effect, somebody else can come in and undermine that effective change to make it non-effective. All along the way, everybody's getting hands in everybody else's pockets. So yeah, it's real weird, but I think the system's broken. But hey, do y'all need me to tell you that? It's gonna work for a little while, I guess. So let me flip to Matthew. And okay, yeah, we got quite a bit of ground to cover. Now, this is, I mean, basically chapter 21, 22, 23 all go together almost without a break, and 23 to 24 virtually has no break. 24 and 25 have no break. Now, originally in the Greek, there were no breaks. So that's one of the problems I have with chapter and verse. It's not really a problem. Chapter and verse is there to help us. But I do feel sometimes it gives us a disservice. And that when I think it's basically the way we're geared. Uh, a lot of people when they go to read the Bible, when they see a chapter, they're like, "Oh man, I got to read all those words and understand all that." And it's like when you hear, "Oh hey, there really shouldn't be a chapter there. It should be 21, 22, and 23 and 24 all together." It's like, dang, I got to read all that, understand all that. But in real life, like real life doesn't happen where it's like, okay, halfway through your day, it's like, okay, well, we're just gonna stop here and pick up our life tomorrow at the same time, same place. You know, life isn't like an episode or a chapter. Life, like time waits for no man, it just keeps marching on. That's kind of how this is. Context keeps marching on. The story marches on. Now you can subdivide it into chunks to make it easier for you, or you can present it in a way that makes it more readable, or you can give it a place, in order that you can come back and reference it more easily, like, chapter 22, verse 2. Putting those numbers there make it easier to come back and find it. But at the end of the day, with the way that we're geared, we're lazy mentally. And it's like, oh, I don't want to read. Well, I don't want to read a whole chapter. I don't even want to read one memory verse and stick with that one verse for a week. So reading a whole chapter, God forbid, and then it's like, oh man, imagine there are no chapters, then what are we gonna do now? Mm, that's interesting. Um, so yeah, we're gonna get going. Um, okay, I wasn't sure. I thought I was gonna have to let the cat in before he started. So I think this is the last thing I'll say about Trump because I saw an interesting comment, and I think it would be a good conclusion to all of that dialogue. But where was it? I think Colin, um, Gerard and Colin were talking about continuing the conversation about Trump, and Colin had said to Vino or Gerard, I think Trump is there to base his unpopular policies on God so we can get the blame when he goes. Basically, he claims to be the Christian guy who comes in. When you ask him, what his favorite verse in the Bible is, he can't answer you. Has all of the Christian people come in to support him, and then, really doesn't follow through on any of it. Even won't go into all that. I think a lot of his is for show, but who knows his heart? I don't, and I'm not going to pretend to. So my view on it, and this is, I won't say his name, but if you thought Hillary Clinton was the Illuminati shoe-in and guaranteed to be the president, and now she's not, and you're wondering how did Trump even make it in there, or he's one of the Illuminati puppets too, just less controllable. They would prefer to have her than him. I think all those things are true to an extent, but I believe that Trump's in there to be a one-term um, derelict president. I think that he's in there to take the fall for a lot of Obama's failed policies. I think he's in there to complicate things worse than. So that way, if you were able to go back to an originating root problem, say, hey, this problem is rooted in this policy that Obama initiated or that Obama finished, that George Bush started, that now Trump's making worse. That's kind of goes back to that compartmentalization and loss. Like they set it up so that by the time it could be effective in its change, the next person has come in and has either undermined the change or helped accelerate. In this case, I think Trump's got ideas. I think he's doing more than we're being told or that we're being led on. I think that what he publicly and openly is saying with his mouth and on his social accounts, I think he's playing dumb, to be honest, because I don't. It's kind of like George Bush. They're both seem kind of like lacking common sense about certain aspects, but they're masterminds in other areas of interest. So I think Trump's there to come in. If they had put Hillary in, hey, the sham's up. Everybody knows the system's rigged. Not enough people voted for her. But the young people, there's enough young people where they think everything they do is all that matters. So by the time you get to the next election, maybe one after that, you're going to have enough old people where they feel like the minority. And by old people, I mean myself and older. Or you're going to have enough young people where they feel like they make up the numbers, right? And so if they can just change the view, the popular view of how many, I mean, it's very complicated stuff the more I try and explain it, I guess, but it seems real simple. I think they wanted Trump in to fail, right? Because if Hillary comes in, they can't get everything done they want to because she would barely get in, and people would spend half of her presidency wondering if she should be in there or fulfilling the rest of the criminal investigation, right? Which just magically disappeared. I think that she got in. I think that she missed the boat so that they could take the heat off of her. Now all the heat and spotlights turned on to Donald Trump. I think they're going to let him take the fall for 4 years. They're going to get him out, and then everyone's going to be, well, see, if you would have picked Hillary Clinton for president, none of this would have been a problem. So now we've got a lot of work to do. Yeah, I could just see it, Hillary 2020, or somebody that would be that fill-in spot. But the ShamWow. What's up, Lois, man? I'm glad to see you, buddy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And this was Forrest Monk had just said that he had shared with some of the Democrat friends, and he said to wait 4 years, and if he's as bad as you say, then the GOP will be finished for good. This was the swing of people had been tired for the liberal movement in the left direction for so long and so hard that now the pendulum has been pushed and swinging far to the right, but he doesn't represent a far right anything. And the farthest of the far right is really showing that they're not who they say they are. And so as the pendulum is going to swing back to the left, like the center has moved completely. So the far right isn't far right anymore, and the far left is now in the middle. And so they're moving our fulcrum, politically speaking, and that's scary if you understand how it works. So, um, hey, Amber, what's going on? And hey, John Smith, what's going on, buddy? So yeah, that's all I have to say about all of that, and I overtalked all of it, so. And if you haven't heard what Justin Bieber has been saying lately, you might want to check it out. I've heard enough around it. It's definitely interesting, so we'll see where that goes. Bernie Sanders. I feel the burn rate. Oh, okay. All right, so I think we're ready to get down. So we're going to cover 23, and I'll change all the information in the video description box tomorrow or something, but we're going to do chapter 23, and that's it tonight. We're going to do 24 and 25 after we get back to Genesis, so I'll be prepared. I'll come prepared for that one. So, well, I guess it was new, actually, on the news here in Sweden, because they're very European in their music taste. And I guess Justin Bieber canceled all his concerts. He's become a Christian now and wants to start his own church. That's what I heard on the surface. Now, I've seen a couple posts that said that he has turned to Jesus Christ specifically and has become born-again believer. That kind of language is more specific and leads me to believing that it's possible, right? But he's also, I guess, in one of the I can't remember if he's in a rehab right now, or I'm sure there's fans that know a lot more about it than I do, but he's come out about how he's basically just chimed in with what a lot of the others in Hollywood have said. A lot, Frodo, man, what's his name? Elijah Wood. He's come out and said that there's a bunch of predators, sexual predators for, basically a bunch of pedophiles in Hollywood. And, he's pretty feminine looking. I could see him, and he's been acting since he was a little kid. So, and some of his movies are very evil. And you see a pattern in movie selection or options, directing, between what writers write, what directors direct, and what actors choose to act in. You put those three things together, and you can tell a lot in a pattern of their body of work. You can tell a lot about who a person hangs out with, what they're into, what kind of circles they swing around in. And it gets really weird. I'll just put it that way. Birds of a feather, right? And not to say guilty by association, don't get me wrong, but it's a really weird. And to be honest, it goes a lot deeper than most people realize. The 666 hand sign, which I'll cover in my symbology video I'm working on. I mean, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but the 666 hand sign, a lot of people see Trump make it a lot. And I actually kind of joke about it in the video, but the 666 hand sign can be the hand sign for homosexual intercourse. I don't know a nicer way to say it, but that circle represents a male. I mean, it could be female, but generally it's a male on male kind of symbol. I'll put it that way. Really weird stuff. There's a Eternal Watchman is a channel. I haven't seen him in a long time. I hope he's doing all right. But he made a video series called Down the Rabbit Hole. Yeah, the AOK hand sign. And he made a series, I think it's a 4-part video series called Down the Rabbit Hole. And the actual terminology down the rabbit hole is also talking about, yeah, so that hand sign, looking over the eye, like there's a deeper encoded language and messaging system going on here beyond just a satanic 666, right? It's in gangs, like in prison, they have a whole hand sign alphabet. In gangs have their own hand sign insignias and references. Like if I'm on the west side, I have a west side hand sign. If I'm a blood, I have a blood hand sign. If I'm a particular type of blood, I have my particular set and crew's blood hand sign for my gang, right? On and on and on. If I'm going to tag a wall with my gang to tell you my territory, I'm going to spray it a particular way. As a layman walking by, you're going to look at it and see graffiti. As a gang member walking by, you're going to see a challenge or a provocation, or you're going to see somebody claiming what's theirs, right? And this is the same thing from a person with a message, sending or receiving, right? When you start to look at these things, there's a lot more going on, and it's not just that the symbols are everywhere, but what the symbols mean to different people. Like what the symbol means to me, hey, I just said, hey, okay. What the symbol means to that guy, he wants to smoke a joint. What the symbol means to that person, they're conducting an orchestra. What the symbol means to that person, they're accentuating a point. What the symbol means to that person, they're writing a check. What the symbol means to that person, they're saying it's perfect. What the symbol means to that person, it's a number 3. In this part of the world, it's a 0. In that part of the world, it means you're an asshole. In that part of the world, it's referring to a literal and possible blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's really weird. And it tripped me out when I found that out because it added an extra layer to the onion. And some people don't like onions. And the deeper you dig, the more you might cry, too. So it's crazy. Okay, so that's that. I want to get to Matthew 23, or else I might as well just say, hey, we'll read Matthew 23, 24, and 25 next time, and we'll just shoot the breeze. So I'll tell you more about what I think about flat Earth, and I'll tell you more about what I think about whatever y'all want to talk about. Okay, so I'll give you guys in the chat, since y'all are here and the ones who I tend to cater to the most. And I know there's plenty listening that aren't chatting, so I'll cater to you guys too. I just don't know how, since you don't respond. Would you guys like to get to Matthew 23, or do y'all want to go into more detail about the other things we've already brought up, which we could make 20 shows about by itself? I'll give it about 1 minute for you guys to say. Alice says read. That's the first answer. Usually the first people that answer are usually the ones I hold a little bit more weight with, too. You don't want to talk about flat Earth, Lois? Must be all them satellites, man. 20 and 1. Option B. I forget which one option B was. Keep going and read. Hey, Gerard, I talk about that male fire and female water symbol in the Rainbow Warriors video. That's pretty quick either. Read and talk. And read and talk. All right, guys. Y'all aren't helping. I think I'm gonna read and talk. How about that? I can follow instructions. Okay, so last time we left off in Matthew 22, and I called it Wedding Crashers, mostly to refer to the guy at the wedding that didn't come dressed properly, even though he had the clothes prepared. It wasn't his place. There was no place for him prepared at the table, but he showed up anyways, right, and crashed the wedding. And we all want to be at this wedding, but there was also the parable about the workers before, and then in the similar fashion to the workers. Now it's the wedding, sending out the servants, and then basically the messenger every time got shot. So he sent a more important messenger. He sent his own son. The guy got killed. And then there's wrath, right? And the same wrath that they get is the same description we have for hell. Then you have the wedding event where it's another parable. Jesus is talking about the king setting up a wedding for his son, inviting everybody. Nobody came. Nobody heard the invitation. So then he went to the highways and invited them, and people came from all over. We went into detail about how I believe that's a reference to the Jews and the Gentiles. Jews didn't receive him, the Gentiles did. Then at the marriage supper, it goes into talking about the condemned. I believe it's a reference to the devil specifically, the guest that was there that wasn't. We don't know if he was invited or not, but we do know that he didn't come with the clothes that were provided. We talked about that in detail. And we talked about the money. You give to Caesar what's Caesar's, and you give to God what's God's. They tried to capture him in a trick question again, as usual. And chop the breeze. Read it up. Okay, so yeah, that's the rundown on the last couple chapters, and real briefly. And so they had asked him trick question, like they always do, and the chapter ends by saying that, and no man was able to answer him a word, neither durst any man from that day, or neither did any man from that day forward ask him any more questions. And I believe that's in reference to trick questions. But what had happened is they tried to set him up with the trick question, like they always do, and he basically said, I'll answer your question if you answer mine. And his question was about David, then referring to David referred to the talking about the Son of God and the Lord and everything, right? And so they said, could he be the son of David? I mean, it's a semantic conversation I already explained. So now it picks up right where that leaves off, after it says no man was able to answer him. And then Jesus spake to the multitudes and his disciples. And so that's where chapter 23 starts. And I think we're going to take a brief intermission for a moment, so I can get a couple things prepared, and then we're in it for the long haul, and we'll buckle down, or we'll buckle up and get the pedal to the metal. So let me get the song on, and yeah, I'll be right back, guys. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for being here. I love you all, and I got an exciting feeling for what's in here, because I had the impression that God was going to do a thing one way or the other, but everybody seemed to want to get into this, and having to change it, I think there's a reason why 23 is a focal point all of its own. I don't know why yet, but we'll figure it out when we get there. So I'll be right back, guys. Uno momento, por favor. Flame inside us all. Sunshine bright, sunshine small. Rains will come, waters rise. Don't you ever lose your light. In this life, you will know love and pain, joy and sorrow. So when it hurts, when times get hard, don't forget whose child you are. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, gonna let it shine, gonna let it shine. May you live each day, don't regret the most of every chance you get. Let your eyes get wide when you look at the stars. The same sense of wonder as a child's heart. With the ones you love, treasure the time. And for those who are gone, keep their memories alive. Hold on to your dreams, don't ever let go. There's a fire inside you, burning with hope. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, gonna let it shine.
forget, darling, don't forget. One day there will be no more pain. We will finally see Jesus' face. So until then, I'm gonna try to brave the dark and let my little light shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, gonna let it shine, gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, gonna let it shine, gonna let it shine. Let it shine, gonna let it shine. There's a little flame inside us all.
Oh yeah, that's my jam. All right, so welcome everybody that's showed up. Better late than never. You're here right on time, actually. Just about to get in to the scripture. Tonight we're going to cover Matthew 23, and I'm pretty positive I'm going to save 24 and 25 for the next time we get into Matthew. So I gave the brief rundown on 22 and 21-ish, and so now 23 is picking up right where 22 left off. And basically this is Jesus's life wrapping up. I mean, it's coming to a close very quickly, and this is one of the last times he goes back and forth with the bad guys. So he had flipped the tables and the money changers, right? And then he gives some parables, and then they talk about more parables last time. And he's calling out these guys right in their face, basically. The corrupt religious leaders, basically. And in this, the religion and politics intermingle. So you got the corrupt politicians and religious leaders, which are one and the same. So here, after Jesus had just answered the question with the question, and a lot of times what he does is he uses their own information against them. He knows where they're coming from. He knows what they believe. He uses what they know and what they believe against themselves, so they have to confront themselves with their own hypocrisy and either admit it and humble themselves to the higher truth, or to double down on their pride and go more deeply into their traditions. And as you can see, we're not really told specific case and points about a lot of these dudes, but we see that a lot of the Pharisees, Sadducees, and scribes, all three sects continuously seem to be trying to catch him in his own words to go against the Jewish customs and traditions and law of Moses and blah blah blah. I think it's not ironic, but I what do you call it? I don't, it's not class isn't the right word, but it's just like, it's with a lot of style and elegance that he beats these people in the wars of words that he has. And as readers, we get those deep insights, but as people that were there on the spot, they might not have gotten all the context. I think it's really cool to answer the Pharisees that's going to address them where they're coming from and shut them down within their own argument style. But then to come back and get the Sadducees from their perspective and to put both sides in their place and show how they're both wrong. To me, I think that's really cool. I don't know. I could just see if Jesus had a collar, he'd be like pulling it up at that point, So chapter 23, then Jesus spake to the multitude and to his disciples, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. All, therefore, whatsoever they bid you to observe, that observe and do. But do not you, or ye, after their works, for they say and do not. So, in other words, do what they say, don't do what they do, right? If you follow their example that they've set by example, then you're going to fall and fail just like they have. And Jesus continues to basically accentuate that. Whenever I hear the sentence start with the word for, in my mind, in modern English, I convert that word to because, right? So I'm going to not add to or take away from the Word of God, but just for contextual purposes, for our understanding and comprehension, for verse 4, I'm going to start this sentence with the word because, but that's not what it says in the Bible. Verse 4, because they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne. So let me just start 3 and read 4 together. All, therefore, whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do. But do not ye after their works, for they say and do not. For they bind, or because they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. But all their works they do for to be seen of men. They make broad their what? They make broad their phylacteries and enlarge the borders of their garments. Um, and love the uppermost rooms at feasts, and the chief seats in synagogues, and greetings in the markets, and to be called of men, Rabbi, Rabbi. But be not ye called Rabbi, for one is your master, even Christ, and all you are brethren. So we can just stop right there. And this, Jesus goes pretty hard here in just a second, but to break down a little bit with context what he's talking about, in not so many words, what he's basically saying is don't follow their example, do what they say, because what they say, for the most part, is pretty accurate, but don't do what they do, because they don't do what they say, right? So you've heard about you can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? These guys are talking the talk, but they're not walking the walk. So listen to their talk, but don't look at their walk, is what Jesus is telling the multitudes and his disciples about the Pharisees. Um, the first things that he described was that the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. And that's a Jewish thing, right? I don't want to go into a lot of detail describing it, but it's the position of power to decide, if I had to summarize it in my own words. And so they like their position of power, is basically what I'm getting out of what he's saying, if I could just get across the gist, right? They don't do what they say, right? They're basically, he's already called them hypocrites multiple times. He's defining what a hypocrite is right here, right? But then he says what they actually do, right? And how it goes outwards to affect others. Because or for they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne. So think about it. In what it is that they're teaching and doing, they're offering up heavy burdens to be put on people. Like, oh, if they're saying you can't do this and you can't do that, and you need to serve God like this and you need to serve God like that, and then they're not doing any of it, all of this standard, right? They're setting the standard and the burden that they're placing on everybody else to observe the law, observe the Torah, to keep the commandments, on and on and on. All of the things that they're saying is putting a lot of pressure on the people to be obedient, right? Now, Jesus isn't saying we should be disobedient. He actually implores them to be obedient to what they're saying. Just don't be in observance to what they're doing, right? Do what they say, don't do what they do. But even Jesus is referring to what they're saying to be doing as being a grievous weight to be borne, right? And these guys are placing the burden on the people, and it's saying that it's too heavy of a burden for them. Um, it's a grievous burden to bear, right? And that they lay it on men's shoulders, but they themselves won't even lift a finger to bear a burden, right? And to me, that's the epitome of a lot of people these days. A lot of talk, but not a lot of walk. I see you talkie, but no walkie. Or the vice versa. You see a lot of people walking it out all the time, but then they don't really talk it, you know? Um, when he talks about enlarging their garment borders, that's another Jewish thing that's real interesting to study, but I don't want to go into a lot of detail about it. A modern idiom of that I could use to express a similar notion would be, I guess back in the day when they had bell bottoms. Right now, everything's about skinny jeans. Yeah. Phylactery, 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 and a small leather box containing Hebrew texts on vellum worn by Jewish men at morning prayer as a reminder to keep the law. Oh, okay. Wow, I wonder if that's that little weird little. Some of the Orthodox Jewish people, you'll see have that weird little cube thing on their head. I wonder if that's what that thing is. Which always gave me the creeps anywhere. Hey, last messages. What's up, buddy? And I think Laird Life popped in. Howdy, buddy. The enlarging of the garment borders were also another thing similar to that phylactery thing. As far as its customary purpose traditionally. But a modern way I guess 70s isn't so modern, but back in the 70s is like the bigger your bell bottoms were, the cooler you were. So it's like, hey man, I've got bell bottoms so big it's gonna swallow everybody up, you know. And that was the sign of coolness. Or platform shoes, you know, like the higher up on your platform shoes you could be, like the more fancy, cool you were. Enlarging the garment so the border would be like, you know, they have to have the fancy clothes. But in this instance, I mean, that's for us on a modern terms, we understand it, um, right? But in the ancient times, there was more of a Jewish element to that, and it has to do with the way that they are about their ceremonial clothes. But I don't want to go into too deep into that. And the book of Matthew was written um, predominantly from a Jewish perspective for a Jewish perspective. So there's usually a lot more detail about that in the book of Matthew in particular. But it says they love the uppermost rooms at feasts and the chief seats in the synagogues. The synagogues is their version of churches, like brick and mortar churches, and the uppermost rooms at the feast were reserved. So you could basically look at that as like they like their VIP sections, right? They like their fancy politicians' dinners. I try to put it in modern terms, and it um, doesn't completely relate because we're coming from a non-Jewish perspective. Most of us are, but as best I could relate that Jewish perspective over here without getting into the details of it. That's kind of how I liken it, right? And how it applies for us. They like to have the best of the best, and they like to be the best of the best, but they're not doing anything the best other than running their mouths, basically, right? Everything they do it for a show. They want everybody to see what they're doing. It's all about ego or reputation, one or the other, right? So they love the uppermost rooms at the feast, and the chief seats in the synagogues, and the greetings in the markets. They like everybody coming and buttering them up, you know. Oh, Rabbi, how are you doing today? Oh, Rabbi, that message was so great. That's um, but Jesus is saying, "Be not you called Rabbi." If I'm not mistaken, I think Rabbi means teacher. So the warning is against seeking titles of honor. Okay, I'm just reading the commentary. Obviously, we should avoid unreasonable literalism in applying such commands. So the commentary is trying to tell you, oh, you can call somebody rabbi if you want to, even though Jesus just said not to. um, but be not you called rabbi, for one is your master, even Christ, and all you are his brethren. Now, this is where Jesus goes hard. So y'all are pretty much picking up what he's putting down, I gather, right? And call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your father, which is in heaven. So does that mean I can't call my dad father? That doesn't make sense to me, right? So it almost makes you go back to thinking, well, you can't take this too literal because that's my dad and my father of the flesh. I've said I've got two fathers in heaven now that he's gone. Um, so I do think the gist of what Jesus is saying is more about titles of honor. At this point, you didn't have a Catholic church where you referred to the guy in the church as, "Hey, Father, can you pray for an altar boy?" you know, um, it doesn't make much sense to me. But then it says, "Neither be ye called masters, for one is your master, even Christ." So he keeps pointing back to Christ, and Christ points to the Father in heaven. And Jesus is the master, which makes us the servants. Jesus is the servant of his master. We're all servants of our Father. So in the big picture, I get what he's saying. But to further scrutinize it, does that mean we should never call our dads our fathers? That doesn't make sense to me, right? Um, but maybe that is what he's saying. I'll have to leave my mind open to the possibilities. But he's saying don't call anybody rabbi, which is, I think, a Jewish word for teacher. So don't call anybody teacher. Don't call anybody father. Don't call anybody master. Right? Verse 10, neither be ye called masters, for one is your master, even Christ. But he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. And whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. So he uses three examples. You have a teacher, you have a father, and you have a master or a lord. The lord and master are almost interchangeable sometimes. So when you think about it, if you were owning slaves at this time, right? Well, you're the master, but the slave's going to call you master, but you're not supposed to let the slave call you master because you're not a master, even though you are a master. Right? So you see how these things are like oxymorons. Don't call any man your father because you only have one father in heaven, but you have a father on earth that's in the flesh. So don't call any man your father even though you have a father because you only have one father which is in heaven. Don't call any man sorry. And it even refers to rabbi as a master again here. So refers to the rabbi as master. It refers to father as father, and it refers to master as master. So that's kind of an interesting. There's something deeper there to be revealed, and I'm not sure exactly what, but the whole point of what he's saying is, I believe, found in verse 11 when it says, "But he that is greatest among you shall be your servant." Right. So the last will be first, and the first will be last. If you're exalted or you're in a position of exaltation, then if you abase yourself, God honors that, right? If you are abased and start out at the bottom humble and you try and exalt yourself, you'll be brought down, right? So whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. So in essence, you're going to get out of this equation what you put into it with God, but you don't put anybody in the position of God, right? And you can draw what he's saying here to build off of what he had just said previously about, yeah, give to Caesar what Caesar's, whose face is on the money, right? Okay, well, if you want to make it all about the money, well, then you go that route, right? But that's not God's, that's Caesar's. If you're going to ask me, you know, about the taxes, well, should you pay taxes? That doesn't make any sense. So Jesus is basically saying, hey, you get with the program the best you can, but you don't dishonor the higher truth in the process, right? Remember the time when they hadn't paid the taxes yet, even though the disciple he sent out said that they had paid the taxes, basically kind of fibbed a little bit, right? And Jesus was like, well, why'd you say that? And sent them back with enough for both of them to pay up. Put your money where your mouth is, kind of thing, right? And Jesus did do that. So if Jesus wasn't concerned about following the law of the land, which he's commanded them to do multiple times, and why would he bother about paying the taxes back that the guy said they had paid that they, I don't think, had? It's not about the taxes, you know, it's about the principle of the matter. And so here, the principle of the matter is that there are no masters except for Christ, and there are no fathers except for the one in heaven. And if you don't have those two things straight, then it doesn't really matter what your status or your position is. If anything, your status or your position is probably going to get in your way of being able to acknowledge those truths. So don't exalt yourself. And if you know scripture, you'll understand what he's saying already has a scriptural answer and response elsewhere. So here when he says, whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, the scriptures say that in many different ways, many different times. You go read Proverbs, go read Ecclesiastes, and you'll see that principle many times. He that shall humble himself shall be exalted. That's all throughout the Bible. But you notice that pride is what will make you want to lift yourself up. Humility is what will make you want to lessen yourself. And in that process, God can be increased. God can't increase if you're trying to increase yourself. That's real simple. If you're trying to have more of me, then there's less of him going to be. There's going to be less room for him, right? Less me and more he, I guess would be the way to put it. So now you also keep in mind what he just said. So contextually, he's already begun this message. Here he's going a little bit harder and deeper into it. He's just called those hypocrites out again and actually defined their hypocrisies. He's called them out for their lifestyles and what it is that their lifestyles are centered around. And it seems real socially relevant, right? And then he gives the solution, right? Hey, the greatest among you will be your servant. And if they're not serving you and they're the greatest among you, they're not of mine, is a clear way to be able to tell. Or they're not living right. Maybe they're stuck in one of these conditions that he's explained. And if there's ever a condition that you're stuck in, other than a physical ailment, not to say that God can't heal those, but sometimes those are what his plan is to have that as an obstacle for whatever reason. But for most cases, when you're stuck in a situation, God has a way out, or he is the way out, even if you have to stay in, if that makes any sense. The way that he's lined this up is he's called the bad guys out. He said what the bad guys did. He's told the bad guys and the good guys what not to do and what they should do. But verse 13, now he turns his focus back on who he was originally talking to and about. Because what I see often is Jesus will address the question and answer session, right? And then after he gets to a point in addressing that, he'll either go address the multitudes or the people around him, that this is a teachable moment. Let me teach them what's happening right here, what's about to go down. Or he'll have his back and forth, and then once he's done with the complete exchange, then he'll turn and use that as a moment to share with the multitudes, etc. So in this case, he just got done having a back and forth conversation with the Pharisees. Then he had another one with the Sadducees. Then he comes back and has talked to the group in parables. Now he's turned and is talking to his to the multitude and to his disciples again. And I kind of see a flow about how this would have been taking place out in the open. Now, verse 13, he's turned back and put his focus back to them. But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. So instead of opening the door to the kingdom of heaven to men, they shut the door and want less people getting in, so they make it harder to enter. Right? For ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer ye them that are entering to go in. Wow, that's a powerful statement right there. So you shut the door to the kingdom, you don't let any of them in because you're too stuck up, but then you guys aren't going in yourselves, and y'all are stopping anybody from getting in, basically is what he's saying. So, but woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men, for you neither go in yourselves, neither suffer you them that are entering to go in. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you devour widows' houses, And for a pretense make long prayer, and therefore ye shall receive the greater damnation. Now, we've addressed this before, but notice how it says, you devour widows' houses. I'm going to ask the chat real quick, and I'm going to give not long, so please stop what you're doing and answer this question if you care to participate. What is it to devour a widow's house? And don't look it up. I just want off the top of your head what you guys think devouring a widow's house means. I'll tell you my take on it in just a second, and we've talked about it before, actually. I think it's pretty clear that for a pretense, make long prayer. I think that's all pretty clear. They're just praying out loud so everybody can hear. That way everybody knows how holy and great they are, right? That is potent scripture. Their family. Red Dog says their family. Mia says family. Take everything she has. DUC says. Mia says a family. Jade says she's honestly not sure. Tina says to take advantage of. Jennifer says taking the kids, not taking care of her, taking her money, taking their money. Really good answers, actually. Okay. Yeah, thanks for the answers there in a timely fashion. Yeah, here's a pro tip. No human is holy and great. Playing on a woman's recent loss. Those are all great answers. Destroy. I think all of those answers are partially accurate, really. There's a few things to understand contextually. I won't spend a great deal of time on this, but for one, I don't believe women were allowed to buy or sell property. So property stayed in a family through a man's bloodline, right? So if you have a widow, the widow has the property that she's on, but once it's gone, I'm not 100% sure I remember how that plays out. But to take what is not theirs and to exploit. And I think that's a great answer, Bridget. And that's kind of what everyone was touching on. And it is playing on the woman's loss. Basically, remember I said earlier that the politics and religion overlapped. Well, what you had for the priests is you had to be from the tribe of Levi, for one, and that's why they call it the Levitical priesthood. So Levi, itical is indicative of the Levi, right? So Levi, itical, Levitical. That's where you get that word from. Weird word, but the Levitical priesthood is after the Aaronic priesthood. So you had Aaron, who was the priest with Moses. We'll get to the story in Genesis pretty soon, but partisan guerrillas hitting on it pretty good there with that answer in the chat. But so in the culture, the priesthood, I don't want to go too far off into the different kinds of priests, but in the priesthood, you basically had them taking care of the less fortunate or the people that could take care of themselves because of their excess. And so what I mean about that is you had people, we discussed this when it came to the prophets, right? When Jesus flipped the tables, the den of thieves and all that, they were buying and selling the offerings in the temple. And that's a supply and demand. Well, if we demand that you're in need of a lot more sacrifices, well, then the supply is going to go up, and to sell or get rid of that supply, you create more demand. That's kind of what Jesus is referring to here in all of their negative qualities of what they're doing by laying that burden on, is they're creating a greater demand for their goods and services. But what is their goods and service, right? Well, they're supposed to be serving God, not serving themselves. Everything Jesus just described was self-service. They like their fancy VIP seats. They like to have the authority sitting in Moses' seat and position of power. They like to sit there and, get that Caesar money, man. That's what they like. And then, of course, as long as you see me praying out loud really long, then you'll wonder, how does he pray for so long, That's because I'm so holy, right? That's the mentality that's being set up here. With the widows, these are the people. If you go back into the Old Testament, and we'll get there when we get there, but if you go back into the Old Testament, what they end up talking about is that they had cast lots, right? So Levi was the one out of the 12 tribes that didn't have a lot. And Levi was going to be in the priest class, and that's where the priest class starts, is in that tribe. Well, that tribe, since they didn't have a lot would be their partition of land in the realm, right? They had no area for themselves. They had the temple, or let's just say they didn't have their own houses with their own little pieces of property, with their own families, with their own things going on. They were in their own group, right? So the Levi is its own group doing its own thing, running the tabernacle or the temple. And in that, everything that they got, they were sustained by God through the other 11 tribes, right? And so in this, since they didn't have anything to upkeep other than God's things, they had more than enough. With the excess, they were supposed to take care of the widows, number one. They were supposed to take care of the orphans, and they were supposed to take care of the sick. I mean, this was your social program, basically, right? Hey, take care, P99. Good night, buddy. It's 5 a.m. here, but uh, sweet dreams, man. Uh, Pretty sure it's man, it might be lady. I don't know. But yeah, so you get where I'm going with this. As a social welfare system, the welfare of their society was supposed to be partially in the hands of the political priests, right? And their excess and affluence wasn't supposed to go to enlarging the borders of their garments or to have bigger cube heads with scriptures inside. It's more for them to be paying it forward and taking care of each other. They're all supposed to be taking care of each other, and that's not happening to the point to where society isn't functioning the way it's supposed to. I mean, I don't want to go too far off into that, but now when you look at it, the one example that he's using, that Jesus is pulling out, is devouring the widow's houses, and for a pretense make long prayer. But the widow's houses and the prayer are two different things. But you devour widows' houses. To me, the simplest way I would put it is that, think about it in terms of banking. Okay, where your religion, where your political system, and where your bank. So bank with us, right? Um, if you're a woman, you already have less rights and opportunities. If you're a widow, your husband's gone, he can't take care of you anymore. If you're past a certain age, one of the brother, we talked about the custom of getting married to the brothers to carry on the bloodline. If you're a widow of a certain age, you will not get a brother to marry you, and you will not have the opportunity. I mean, by this point in the age range we're talking about, you ain't having kids much anymore, anyhow, unless you get a Sarah story going or something. But all in all, when you really look at it, it's pretty sad, really. I think it's what a lot of you guys said. It's exploiting the woman because she has A, no power, and B, an inability to give it whatever it is that's needed um, to abide by, right? So you see in the scriptures there are times when women live alone and stuff like that, but it's usually in a bigger city, from what I can recall. There's more to this, but Jesus wouldn't go out of his way in a laundry list of things to point out and just throw that one randomly in the middle. There's something more to that, I believe, specifically about devouring widows' houses. So I was just curious to get y'all's take on that. Most of y'all hit right on the money with it. So, um, hey, good night, Amber. Send my love to the family. Take care. In verse 15, he continues on with more woes. So he's warning these dudes, woe to you for this, woe to you for that, right? Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you compass sea and land to make one proselyte, and when he is made, you make him twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. Wow. A proselyte would be like a follower. if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Yeah. The commentary here says that Jesus does not criticize the Pharisees for their evangelic zeal. He objects to its results. The converts wound up out Phariseeing the Pharisees, and that meant they became even more children of hell, i.e., bound for hell, than their teachers. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and when you have somebody emulating somebody else, anything you can do, I can do better. So you have here where the student becomes the teacher, basically, but what the teacher taught the student was how to be more stuck in the wrong path than getting onto a right one. So when it says that they compass sea and land, it means that these Pharisees are getting out and about. They're getting a lot of work done, but the work that they're doing is a hindrance, not a help, right? So when they have one proselyte or somebody that they have either converted or um, maybe a closer word for what I'm thinking would be apprentice. Right? So after they have apprenticed the apprentice, once the apprentice comes into his own, he's two times more zealous for what the idea is, right? And this is how ideology works generally, and radical ideology in particular. People take something radical and make it more radical, right? And generation after generation, it gets crazier and more crazy. So, yeah, Judaism is this, I guess it'd be the semantics of the word Judaism. I don't know if Jesus is condemning Judaism. I think he's condemning the systematic dumbing. I wouldn't say dumbing down, but this is systematic traditionalization of what it is that should have a spiritual life to it, not a mechanical essence. Um, robots can follow orders and instructions, but there's no soul to that, right? It takes like an intelligence. It doesn't take intelligence to obey, it takes obedience. But an intelligent person would probably better obey, right? So wisdom and intelligence are far removed from each other often. Verse 16 goes on with more woes. Woe unto you, ye blind guides, which say, whosoever shall swear by the temple, it is nothing, but whosoever shall swear by the gold of the temple, he is a debtor. That's a I could take that a few different ways, but basically it reminds me of the blind leading the blind and having misplaced understanding of what the priorities are. That's the simplest way I could put what that's trying to tell you. Um, Ye fools and blind, for whether is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifieth the gold? And whosoever shall swear by the altar, it is nothing, but whosoever sweareth by the gift that is upon it, he is guilty. Ye fools and blind, whether it is greater the gift or the altar that sanctifieth the gift. So the key word here that keeps being used that's drawing my attention is sanctifieth, or the sanctified by, right? The altar, the temple. Okay, the altar's in the temple. And Jesus usually talks 2 or 3 layers deep when he's talking. I can't help but to think when he says, um, when you swear by the temple, I'm not thinking so much of the action of swearing as much as I'm thinking about the act, or I mean what is the temple? I think about the person themselves, not the actual building. But he's talking about the building, right? You swear by the building, saying the building's nothing, but the gold is what's important. Then you're in debt to God, right? Not buy the gold. You're in debt to sin. That's how I look at what he's trying to get across. But if the body's the temple, the gold is the soul, right? They're looking at the gold of the temple, which is what needs sanctification. They're looking at the gold not of the soul but of the flesh. And instead of looking at the temple, which sanctifies the gold, so he's taking it. This is one example, should have been this one. This is another example, should have been that one. So he's saying they're blind. Which one's greater? Gold on the outside of the temple, or the inside even, or the temple, it's the building itself, right? Do you want to look at the detail, or do you want to look at the big picture? If you think this little detail, which is really the insignificant piece, if you think that's what's significant, you're missing the big picture. If you swear by the altar, to me, I think of the altar as the heart inside the temple, right? Are you crossing your heart over here, or is it the desire of the heart that's more important than the heart itself? That's kind of how I look at it, right? Um, the gift that's on the altar. When you give something to God, you put it on the altar, right? And that's giving it to God. So what's more important, the gift on the altar or the altar that sanctifies the gift and even makes it receivable or accepted, a acceptable offering, right? You fools and blind, for whether is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifies the gift? Whoso therefore shall swear by the altar swears by it and by all things thereon. And whoso shall swear by the temple swears by it and by him that dwells therein. And he that shall swear by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him that sitteth thereon. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you may pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. These ought you to have done, and not to leave the other undone. Ye blind guides, which strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Oh man, he's not holding any punches back this time, is he? And it had just finished the last chapter saying that no one asked me any more questions anymore. I said I think that's a reference to trick questions. What else is there to ask after he lays all this out there, pretty much? I mean, I can see him thinking this for a couple years, walking around, getting thing here, thing there, and then it's like, all right, guys, you wanted it, here you got it. Sit and listen. Um, but you pay a tithe of mint and anise and cumin. All right, so mint, anise, cumin. If you're giving these things as offerings to God or tithes, those are all things at that time in that place were difficult to get and were probably very, very valuable, right? But they're forgetting the matters of the law, which are heavier, which is judgment, mercy, and faith, right? And these are the things they should have done and focused on more than what was being left on the altar or the gifts, right? And then you blind guides, which strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Now, there's a whole bunch of figures of speeches I could use to equate to that one, but there was one. I had a coworker I used to work with, and whenever I get too much into detail, or he called it minutia, even if it was important, but when you go too far into the minutia or too much into detail, over explaining, which I do frequently, he would say, "You're like picking out pepper out of." Well, he referred to a gnat, and that's what made me reminded of it. But which strain out a gnat and swallow a camel? He'd say you're like picking out a grain of pepper out of gnat crap. He didn't say crap, but a speck of pepper out of one of those small things. Like sometimes I do that, but that's what Jesus is basically saying that these guys do with what it is that they believe. They'd rather focus on the gnats and straining out the gnats, missing the big picture, and end up swallowing a camel. Um, which is impossible to swallow a camel, just like it's impossible for a camel to go through the eye of a needle, which makes you, I don't know, it makes me wonder sometimes when Jesus puts a thing one way one time and puts it another way another time. You put those two things together, kind of get more of a style for how he presents his information as a human being too. Not just like God from up on high, but this is like a dude in a bag of skin like we all have, walking around. Who knows? He might be hungry when he's having this conversation. And he's a human being. But I try to understand the man, right? Not just the Son of God, but the human being that Christ was too. I have no clue, but imagine he was a great guy. So, anyways, verse 25, Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you make clean the outside of the cup and of the platter, but within they are full of extortion and excess. So right there tells you they're excessive in what they do and what they are into, but they also probably have excess based on the affluence of their business, which is their religion is a business now, den of thieves style, right? Extortion is exactly what we were talking about in swallowing the widow's house, and extorting people by creating a supply and demand market system for God's spiritual issues. And I think cleaning the outside of something but leaving the inside dirty is a real simple. I don't think y'all need me to define that for you, right? But if you can understand something I didn't finish saying, but the tithe of the mint and the anise and the cumin, but have omitted the heavier matters. In my mind, I think about some very fleshly dudes that think they're super spiritual. Some guys that think that they have the direct message of God preserved in their own house, basically, right? Um, oh, that's cool, Jennifer. Jennifer said that the mint was used to scatter on the floor to make the places smell sweet. Some aromatherapy, right? They probably needed a lot more aromatherapy back then. um, yeah, send the youngster to sleep, man. I hope they have sweet dreams. Um, well, hello, Mike. Oh, so yeah, so I'm thinking about these guys think that they're the holiest thing next to Swiss cheese, right? These guys think that their their stuff doesn't stink. They think that they're the VIPs, and for all intent and purposes in this society and culture, they are. They run the show. They convert people to their own views and make the people that are converted even more radical than themselves. They put burdens on people of expectation of what God requires, but yet don't fulfill their own obligation to the same standards. They're hypocritical. They're liars. I mean, wow. And when I say they, maybe not all, but as a title, the scribes and Pharisees are the ones, right, that he keeps referring to directly. So what are these dudes? These are the guys that think bigger is better and the more showy, right? So if I could give God, what's the most expensive thing in the world, right? I could see these guys sitting there thinking, what's the most expensive thing in the world I can get my hands on? How about some cinnamon, right? Well, let's get as much cinnamon as we can get, and let's go all drop that on the altar, and let's make sure everybody knows we're putting in the order now. Let's make sure everybody knows when the shipment comes in. Let's make sure everybody watches us, put some ashes on our head, and we'll fast a little bit, and we'll pray all day long while we're walking it down the street real slow so everybody can make sure and get a load of all that cinnamon. And then when we get to that altar, we're just going to weep and tear our clothes and look around and be like, you know, woe is me, And it's like, throw all that cinnamon up there. And it's like, all right, walk away. I could just see him like day 2, day 3. All right, guys, fast is over. Party time. I'm all clean. How about you? I'm even holier than I was before, It's like, I got my holy juice going now. I could just see these guys like really believing that, like, man, God's gonna love that cinnamon. We gave him so much. I could just imagine how much stuff in heaven I'm gonna get. I don't even understand these guys' concepts of heaven really, but if the most you can do is what you should do, unless you could do less with more. If what you give is less, but it's more in value, then that will be more meaningful on the outside. So as long as the outside looks nice and bright and shiny, that's great, right? It's mo better. But you remember when the woman she gave what I think just all that she had, which was like one little piece of money. And those dudes are all like, oh man, why are you, so happy with her? She barely even gave anything. Look how much we gave. And then Jesus is like, yeah, she didn't give much, but she gave everything she had. And you guys have a whole lot, and y'all barely gave anything, even though it was, probably a nice sum. It's not the it's the thought behind the thing, right? It's the principle. Back again, we always go back to the principles of an issue or a matter. Yeah, so you blind thou blind Pharisee, cleanse first that which is within the cup and platter, that the outside of them may be clean also. If you clean the inside, the outside gets clean too. If you clean just the outside, the inside only gets more and more dirty, while you have the illusion of cleanliness. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye are like unto whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones, and and of all uncleanness. Okay? Even so, ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within ye are all full of hypocrisy and iniquity. So this verse 27 is one of my favorite ones, actually. Sepulchres where it's like a church you bury people in kind of thing. I always think of those. If you ever been to a cemetery, there's usually like one spot off to the side. It's got like a building, and they got like where the coffins are in the pull-out drawer instead of buried under the dirt. That's what I always picture when I picture like a sepulcher. Usually like with a big bell tower at the top or something like that. I'm having more of like a medieval Gothic picture in mind, and that's totally not what it's talking about, but close enough reference. So think about a sepulcher with its burial place. Dead people and dead things are unclean, and they make you ceremonially unclean also. You have to go through a cleansing process when you do come in contact with the dead and unclean stuff, blah, blah, blah. So when he's referring to these priests um, as a whitewashed sepulcher, okay, yeah, it looks nice and shiny and pretty on the outside. It's whitewashed. White is a reference to cleanliness or no sin, that kind of thing. So here you have you kind of remember we just talked about the temple too. You can look at a type of temple, but it's not a living spirit of God inside the temple. It's literally dead men and their bones. And so if you look at that as a living act of a spirit or a dead act of the flesh, these are dead men's bones, right? And the place looks like a place where it should be clean, but it's got uncleanliness, right? And then so when he refers to the people themselves, cleanse first that which is within the cup, right? And even so, outwardly appearing righteous unto men, but within you are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. So the dirty cup reference what is dirtying their cup, if they are these cups, hypocrisy and iniquity, which both of those things they should not have if they were truly following what they truly believed. But the system has gotten to a point where what they truly believe now has been so intermingled with iniquity and all the wrong things that it's kind of like how Gerard said that Jesus was talking against Judaism. I mean, at this point, Judaism has almost become something that God can't be for, even though it's semantics about how you define the word Judaism. But God's chosen people and their way, His way that He told them and showed them. By the time Jesus is here now, this is what they have done to it, right? And so that's why He's calling them out so harshly. Woe to you! Woe to you! Woe to you guys! Um, yeah, exactly. Pray for our enemies, right? For sure. And so I look at anybody that's a non-believer as my enemy because it's like the Matrix. If they are not born again and awoke in the Spirit, then they're asleep and they're an active member that at any point in time can become an agent of the enemy, indwelt in everything. I mean, literally. So the Matrix wasn't that far off when it comes to that. Now, when I say enemy, I don't look at it in terms of seek and destroy. I will destroy my enemies. They're not my enemy. They're the enemy of God, actually, if you think about it, because they're children of disobedience and their father is the devil. So until they get born again and they're in disobedience openly, that is a very quick uh, expressway to not just hell, but evil, right? There's a lot of people going to hell that aren't evil. Um, but all the evil people are going to hell unless they get born again, right? So whether you're evil or not, it doesn't really matter. If you're lost, you're lost. You're lost. It's the same difference. But these Pharisees are evil and they're lost, and they're not just helping people stay lost, they're making people not just carbon copies of themselves to continue this system, but they're bringing about proselytes that are even worse than themselves. Fast forward this 2,000 years, and where are we now? Not much has changed. And I will just say that, right? There are still Pharisees and Sadducees. They just don't call themselves that anymore. They might be executive producer such and such, or you know, they might be uh, uh I could make a million examples, but they could be the Trilateral Commission CEO, who knows who these people are now, but hey, good night, Red Man, take care. Oh, wow. I thought you were leaving. I thought you said you had to say goodbye now. I'm sorry to hear that. That's crazy. I'll let the people in the chat talk with you about that, so I can stay on point, but I'm really sorry to hear that. Um, Kind of caught me off guard a little bit, buddy. So, yeah, so they're hypocrites. They're like whited sepulchres. Indeed, they appear beautiful on the outside, but inside they're full of unclean things, in particular hypocrisy and iniquity. So, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you build the tombs of the prophets and garnish the sepulchres of the righteous, and say, if we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourselves that ye are the children of them which killed the prophets. Fill ye up then the measure of your fathers. And verse 33, ye serpents, ye generation of vipers, how can you escape the damnation of hell? Question mark. Now, for a little bit of context, he's alluded to this portion of conversation before now. He's talking about them doing all the things that they're supposed to be doing. Maybe not supposed to be doing. That might not be the right way to put it, but he's basically saying from the position which they're coming from after the act. The action they've taken is that they build the tombs. They build the tombs of the prophets. They decorate the sepulchres of the righteous. They say, remember, they say things with their mouths, but they don't actually do what they say. He's given another example of that. But this is more what they're saying inside their minds or their hearts. If we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Now, we'll get there in the Old Testament, but as that story plays out, the prophet, usually when Israel is backsliding or in rebellion to God or falling away or getting into things they shouldn't be getting into, often God sends a person on his behalf that speaks for him or gives a direct message um, that he's given them to pass on. And we today refer to those guys as prophets, and those men and women as prophets. So a prophet isn't somebody who tells the future. A lot of people think that a prophet and a psychic are the same things, or roughly have the same kind of capabilities. Just one's got God and one doesn't, and that's not the case. Prophets are not crystal ball readers. Like where God is their crystal ball, that's not what a prophet is. If you go into the understanding of the word prophet, messengers of God are angels, right? So anyone that has a message from God, technically by the Hebrew definition of the word messenger, would be an angel. But we understand when we're referring to angels, figuratively say, "Oh, you're such an angel" to someone that does a nice or sweet thing, right? And that's true. But an angel of heaven, right? Well, some could make the argument that we knew God before He created everything, so we're kind of with Him before heaven. We'll be with Him after heaven. Eternity's outside of time. Could be, we could be angels of heaven. I've heard people go with that, and angels are different than humans. You got animals, you got humans, you got angels, then you got God. And other than that, there could be some in betweeners. Not really sure, but that's the hierarchy of life that I understand. Intelligent life, right? Animals, humans, angels, God. Um, what am I even talking about? Um, so when I think about that, this all ties in because this is a deep topic. This scripture here, fill up, fill ye up in the measure of your fathers, is referring to at the time when Israel was falling back. A prophet is somebody that either speaks on behalf of God or for God, right? So usually a prophet will go and be like, "Thus saith the Lord," and that's because God literally said it to them to tell the next, right? So they're just passing it on, telephone style. Um, or God, it will tell them to do something specifically, and then say, "I'll give you the words when you need them," right? But either way, a messenger and a prophet sometimes can be the same thing at the same time. But not all messengers are angels, and not all prophets are angels. I mean, it's once again gets back to semantics. It's going to be like the key word for tonight is semantics. Um, so in this case, I keep getting my mind distracted. There's too much to explain or discuss, and I want to be brief, but that's not always an option. So usually the prophets, man, I can't think of a prophet other than Jesus that has good news. In reference to the Old Testament here of what he's referring to, the prophets usually came and would tell Israel what they were doing wrong, right? And they would give a warning, or they would give a solution that wasn't popular, right? Or God sometimes would even send prophets to places that, hey, if you share this message, you'll be killed. And they go and share the message anyways, and the place is saved because of it. Sometimes the people get killed anyways. But um, in this instance, most of the prophets of God had been martyred, right? And it's usually God's own people murdering his own messengers. Like, don't shoot the messenger. Well, they didn't shoot him, but yeah, often God sent messengers to his own people and were killed. Now, relate that back to Matthew chapter 22, 21, where the messengers continuously keep getting either violently dealt with or at some point killed, and even the reference to the king sending his own son, the property owner sending his own son. I don't believe that the Jews knew that their Messiah was going to be the Son of God. I think they just thought he was going to be a conquering king and a kinsman redeemer of a bloodline, particular, all powerful, all that stuff, right? But they don't think that they believed or knew it would be the literal Son of God, which makes it even more of a point of contention. If, for instance, in Islam, if you look, they believe Jesus was a holy prophet, if not the holiest prophet, but they will not and cannot believe that he is the Messiah in a son of God, because God can't have sons, according to the way that they view things. And I would imagine that some of the original Jews probably believed in a similar fashion. If we weren't told it's going to be the Son of God for our Messiah, either we didn't understand what we were told, or it's not there. And they're not going to believe we don't understand what we were told or what we've been trained up here. So they're going to believe that that's not a viable option. So if you got to, someone, I just see this, it's amazing how it unfolds and how deep it is in such a I can't even explain what I'm trying to say. So, anyways, these Pharisees have been saying they do this, they do that, blah, blah, blah. But when they say, right, and we've already been told that they say but don't do, here they're saying, if we had been in the days of our fathers, right, and they're talking about their bloodline or their bloodlines. A lot of times it's the priests that are killing the prophets, which is really weird because they're supposed to be in the same group, basically. It says, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. In other words, if we were around during the times of our fathers who were related to that killed the prophets, if we were there, we wouldn't have been those guys. And here they are getting ready to kill the Son of God, not just one of the prophets, but it's amazing to me to see how this is right there in the face. I wonder if there's even one of these Pharisees besides Nicodemus that actually thought to themselves, man, I remember Jesus said that. At this point, and now here we are going down this line, and I wonder if he's right after all. Wonder if I would like to be wondering what these guys were thinking after the fact. Like, how many of these dudes were actually genuinely just wrong and full of pride and ego, or how many of these people were actually literally evil on purpose, knowing it's the Son of God and killing him anyways out of just pure evil? I think the answer would be more than we think, but on both sides to the question, really. Um, Jesus said, fill you up then the measure of your fathers. In other words, you're going to get what you deserve, right? You say these things, but in reality, hey, I already said I'm about to go die in Jerusalem. Here, I'm in Jerusalem. What's next? Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out if you've been paying attention to what Jesus has been saying, right? Now, ye serpents, ye generation of vipers, how can you escape the damnation of hell? In other words, unless something that he has said has been addressed, there is no way they can escape the damnation of hell. Not only are they already on their way on the highway to hell, but they're also like getting everybody and their mother's brother to come get on the bandwagon too. And remember what it said about getting in the way of somebody's ability to have faith. Like, these guys aren't just putting stumbling blocks; they're putting landmines out, not realizing that that's the case. Maybe some of them do. If they all realized it was the case, I don't think Jesus would take the time to go back and forth with them, if that makes sense. The fact that he goes back and forth with them, I think, is predominantly for the people to see the error of the ways of what the exchange will reveal. But I also think it's for these people to have a chance to come to their senses spiritually and maybe get their head in a better place. So, okay, we're in verse 34. We're almost done here, too. And we have covered a lot, and I've talked a lot. Meandering away. Okay. Let's see, Truth Freeze. What's up, buddy, by the way? Seventh-day Adventist teacher thinks that the abomination will be a priest at the third temple and Satan and just looking man snare many. Must have thought hard, especially for the veil was rent. That's interesting concept. The third temple, and it's debated heavily if there even will be a literal third temple or not. They've been making preparations to fabricate and erect a temple, like in a very quick fashion. All of the ordinances, to do a lot of the ordinances for the temple, you have to have a lot of instruments. It's all described in the Old Testament. It's really boring stuff, in my opinion. Although there's some interesting things about what there is deeper hidden in there. It's a bunch of links and measurements and materials and units used, and I'm not into all that, but I've studied it a few times, and there are some interesting things. But will there be one of those rebuilt a third time? Literally, all of those things have been prepared ahead of time. So the possibilities never, well, let's just say there wouldn't have been a possibility for it to even be an actuality till Israel was a country again. So in a sense, that's kind of prophecy being fulfilled. Now that Israel's been rebirthed as a nation, the Temple Mount's heavily in dispute. It's that I would have a hard time believing that the temple will be built, but I have grown up always believing and understanding that it will be built, and that the abomination of desolation is when the Antichrist goes into that temple. And one thing to note is if the temple goes up, there will be animal sacrifices once again. Um, Now, once they will have animal sacrifices, then you have a reinstitution of this model system of what's going on that we're reading about here in Jesus's time. That's what they're talking about reviving by putting up a new temple. I don't see PETA getting down with that, but I wonder how many um, members of PETA are Jewish. Might have a little bit of religious. This is where a lot of political correctness is going to have a hard time underlying this situation. But hey, for peace's sake, people are willing to make compromises. So who knows? We'll see. Some people argue that the body of the person were each individually the third temple. I don't believe that at all, hardly. Maybe figuratively or symbolically, I could get down with that analogy. Don't think that that's a literal 100% all we are, each and every one of us that believe are the third temple of God. That if you just run through that representation, it doesn't work, because the third temple is a specific third temple, not, how many billion people are on the world right now? It'd be the whatever billionth temple right now, not including every other temple that's been born before every person that's been alive and dead in this generation. So it gets really confusing. Once again, goes back to semantics. So I think semantics is important. Um, yeah, if you had one word to describe me, brief would never be the word. That's for sure. The third temple is our body. So Gerard, you do think that the third temple is our body. I see the third temple as being both. I'm more in the both category. And the reason why, it's an interesting discussion, but the reason why I don't think the third temple could be our body, like in a quite 100% literal sense, is because the temple is for God, right? And the outer court is open to the Gentiles, but the court itself, the inner Holy of Holies, was for only the high priest. The inner court was only for Jews. The outer court was open to Gentiles, but ultimately the temple of God is God's temple. Let's just take this analogy, for example, and put it on to Mount of the House of God. Yeah, so the temple is the house. In linguistic terms, you could make the argument, but as far as scriptural terms, when I think of a temple, the temple of God itself literally is the one that was built, but it says not with hands and stuff, but this gets into possessive, I guess. If you're not redeemed and owned by God, if you're lost soul, well, that body would still be a temple equally as much as a believer's body would be a temple. Yeah, and so this gets into the DNA topic and goes into changing the DNA, and I've heard some interesting thoughts and theories on that. I think that for a linguistic term, it could be used, interchangeably. You could say, yeah, our body's the temple. The scriptures back that up. Is our body the third temple? I don't know if the scripture even refers to the third temple, but we know there was a tabernacle before there was a temple. There was one temple, it got destroyed. There was a second temple. Jesus in Matthew 24 even prophesies it being destroyed. But the abomination of desolation that has to happen before he can return has to happen in the temple. And we know that the prophecy is partially fulfilled when when Rome comes and destroys Jerusalem, gets rid of the temple, does what Jesus said they're going to do. But the prophecy has still not completely been fulfilled to the degree to what Jesus was saying before he could return. Right? So that to me is to me it's kind of a moot point, really. But there's a lot of people that take our bodies being the temple and the third temple and the end times, they take that so far to an extreme, it doesn't go with scripture. It's still possible, um, until you find a scripture that refutes it. And I always lean with scripture rather than I lean with ideas or concepts or theoretics, right? But um, I can't help but to feel like there will be a literal temple built in Jerusalem. It seems very unlikely, but I think that it's one of the things that the Antichrist is going to be able to champion as, look what I can do. Look at the world peace I can bring. Yeah. Me and Los, it's in the chat. Me and Los have been keeping up with the temple rebuilding for years or more, buddy. I'm not good at math, but it's been a long time. We've been keeping up with it. Hey, if there's any great new updates, we'll let you know. But for the most part, I don't think that it matters a whole lot. The in my mind, unless you take it completely figurative, the Antichrist can't come into my temple and desolate me. Period. It's not possible. So I'm born again believer. My body is the temple. If you want to call it the third temple, there is no possibility for Jesus to ever come back because the Antichrist can't come and abominate and make desolate my temple. Like, so it's just doesn't make sense, right? The more simple you do keep it, I think the easier it becomes. But look what I can do. uh, okay, so that's my take on it. And I didn't mean to go too far off into the temple, but I do think it's important. And as the time draws more near, I think the more easy it will be to tell. Hey, as soon as it becomes a DNA in our body thing, we'll know right away. We're on the cusp with transhumanism and all that stuff to where I think that's why people see it as a more viable option. Uh, Peace in the Middle East, pretty far away, always been far away. I've been talking about it since I was a kid. When they want peace, they'll create it. I'll put it that way. How about that, right? Yep. Jenny, I was singing it in my head already too. Anything you can do, I can do better. That's how the Antichrist. But that's how we're gonna see the Antichrist. The Antichrist is gonna be the guy that comes in and he doesn't say, "Hey, look what I can do," or he doesn't say, "Anything you can do, I can do better." The Antichrist is gonna come in and just do it. People are gonna look at him and say, "Hey, anything anybody else has ever done, he can do better." People are gonna beg this guy to come. I mean, people are. It's kind of like, I'm not equating Trump to the Antichrist, but there were people that were so sick of the way things have been going on for 8+ years. They were begging for a non-politician, somebody who knows how to manage money, somebody who is affluent and in society well enough to where, hey, I don't have to like him, but he's there. He's not one of them, but he's not one of us. He's kind of like if you were to take one of us normal folk and put us into the position of being able to be a president. Donald Trump would be like somebody in the middle. He's not one of us. He's not one of them. I don't think he even knows what he is, right? It reminds me a lot of that. The Antichrist, I think he's going to know he's the Antichrist, but you don't just come onto a scene and say, hey guys, I know there's been these prophecies about me and I'm just going to walk into the position and fulfill the role. I think it's going to come as a surprise even to believers. If it were possible, even the very elect would be deceived. So there's going to be something appealing enough about this guy to where almost everybody's going to like or admire the dude. So that's why I automatically can say I don't believe Obama is not enough people like him to be the Antichrist. Same thing with Trump. Trump cannot be the Antichrist. Not enough people like him to be the Antichrist. It's going to be a shocker, I think. It's going to come out of left field. And for those that have been paying attention, I think they might get a slight heads up, but it'll be very clear, I think, a second a temple goes up, a literal physical temple goes up over there, man, would that not be a sign that would just make you like look at your watch and put on the stopwatch and just keep track? you know, like the countdown clock begins at the moment I hear about the cornerstone of that temple being laid. If they put the cornerstone of the third temple down, I would say start your countdown to his return, like literally, like go buy a clock specifically just for tracking the time up to when he returns. That's what I would say. Um, Whoever it is, because I believe the Antichrist is alive and well right now. Whoever it is, they're behind the scenes. Uh, it could be that Kuchner guy. I don't believe so, but I've seen a few videos. There is something very peculiar about that fellow. I have a feeling that more than likely he's going to be Jewish. I believe, like I said earlier, I've seen before in a study that he comes out of the tribe of Dan. I think they call him the Assyrian, which is a title. And Assyria is different than the country of Syria. It gets kind of complicated, but there are some parameters. I don't think it matters. We should be more focused on when Jesus is coming than when the Antichrist is coming. But I personally believe we'll be here to see it. So just be aware. That's what I say. Okay, so I'm going to finish reading now. Sorry to get off on there, but verse 34, it says, "Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them you shall kill and crucify, and some of them shall you scourge in your synagogues, and persecute them from city to city, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Barachias, whom you slew between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation." So in other words, God's about to throw down the hammer on these dudes for not only what they're doing and have continued to do, but for what's been going on for a long time. And he's describing what's going to be happening to him and his followers in the near to not so distant future, up until this very day, right? And one thing I find interesting too is Jesus here tells us something very interesting. He is talking specifically about the bloodshed of the prophets, okay? I find it very interesting that Abel is being clearly categorized here by Jesus himself as a prophet. If you're not familiar with Abel, Abel is Cain's brother. Cain slayed Abel, right? Abel, I believe, is the second born son. So you got Cain, the firstborn older brother, and you have Abel, the younger brother, and Abel apparently was a prophet. I don't believe that Abel said much, so I'd be curious to go back and see if Abel ever had anything to say, if he's a prophet for us or just a prophet to God, if that makes sense. I mean, his blood cried out to God. I don't think that's what made him a prophet, though. um, Very interesting, though. Very interesting. It makes me wonder. So he's talking about the first prophet Abel, and he's going all the way to the prophet Zacharias, and Zacharias was killed in between the entrance to the temple and where the altar itself was, which is a very particular kind of evil. I'll just say that, and we'll get to that story when we get there. But Jesus is using very specific examples, right? And then so he says, "Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation." So the justice and judgment for all of those things will be paid to this generation here because of how evil they are. And that's basically Jesus prophesying about what's to come. And he describes what's to come in Matthew 24. Not just for us here in our end times, but for these guys at the end of their age there. Because their time, this is like their curtain call, and they don't even know it, basically. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, and stonest them which are sent unto thee. How often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and you would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. For I say unto you, ye shall not see me henceforth till ye shall say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. And that's it. So that's our complete chapter 23. And if you noticed here, Jesus is upset with these guys. Really upset. He enters into the city, gets to the place of worship, the house of God, house of prayer, right? He gets to the temple and has to throw the tables, right? But if you remember, before he even gets there, no, actually, he flips the tables first, but then when he goes and leaves and is on his way to where we're having this encounter that we're reading about now, on his way, the barren fig. I remember the fig tree from chapter 21. What does it looks like? Verses 18 and 19. Now in the morning, as he returned into the city, he hungered. So, okay, so he was in Jerusalem, went to the temple, flipped the tables, then he went to Bethany. He stayed in Bethany for the night. On his way back to Jerusalem the next day, he hungered, and that's when he went to the fig tree, and he found nothing on it except for leaves only. And he said, Let no fruit grow on thee henceforth forever. And the tree withered away, and everyone was like, Ooh, wow, how'd you do that? And we talked about how I believed that to be a reference for Israel, maybe even specifically Jerusalem. In this instance, as we get further, it might lean more towards Jerusalem, except for it's not forever. But Jesus is telling what fruit that they've been producing out of the temple, right? And what kind of proselytes they're bringing about, and what kind of burden they're placing on the followers, and what kind of hypocrites they are in action and word. Uh, and then at the end, in the same way that he cursed the tree, and it was effective immediately, this one is a generational curse he just places, right? Ye serpents, ye generation of vipers. You're referring to the whole generation, right? Which means there's probably far and few between where you might find one of those ones we were talking about earlier that, just didn't know any better. Ye serpents, ye generation of vipers, how can ye escape the damnation of hell? That's a rhetorical question that's pretty hard line. Basically, Jesus is saying, you're not going to escape hell because you won't get with my program, and it's not mine but he who sent me's program that y'all are supposed to be y'all's program. Like, I'm not supposed to be telling you anything you don't already know at this point, and the fact I'm having to correct you this much, how in the world are y'all going to be able to avoid the damnation of hell? He's probably asking himself the question, like, dang, these guys are screwed. How are they going to avoid that? I don't know. So it's up to them. Like, he is the door, and he's opening the door. He's giving them the cheat sheet. He's giving them the answers. He's even told them what they've done wrong. They won't get right, and he knows it. And I think it hurts him, to be honest, and it angers him. So when he said, Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. For I say unto you, you shall not see me henceforth till you shall say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. And you think about it, you can send prophet after prophet after prophet, and they won't hear you. You can send your only begotten son, and they still won't hear you and kill you. And it literally takes the wrath of God to come down before people even want to begin to start thinking about getting right. That's the message I'm getting here. And I think that, behold, your house is left unto you desolate. Well, these guys, being the priest class, don't have a house. They have a temple, and that temple is their lot, and their religion and power is their position of stewardship. And God just told them what he thought about their stewardship. Game over. Okay, so Okay. So yeah, that's the whole chapter. That's my thoughts on it. George's saying some interesting things, but I'm not sure in reference to what. But it's definitely all interesting topics of discussion. I'm glad y'all are having a good one in the chat. Okay. It does. Jennifer said that she senses urgency in the spirit about all that's been going on in the world, in times relevant. I don't think we know. The Bible tells us that the man or son, I can't remember if it says man of perdition or son of perdition. Either way, it's the same reference to the Antichrist or the devil. You'd have to look at the reference, but more often than not, it's usually referring to the Antichrist. So when you look at that, it says that he'll be revealed, right? Well, if the Antichrist will be revealed, then at some point it'll be made known. At the point where if we have a literal abomination of desolation, where he walks into the temple, claims to be God himself, and then commands everyone to worship him, which leads there into having to take a mark of the beast and stuff. Um, Once he goes into the temple and claims to be God himself, there will be no doubt in anybody's mind that has any understanding of eschatology or end times or scripture. You could probably watch movies enough to get it and figure it out from just movies alone, right? In pop culture. As soon as you see a guy go into the temple and claim to be God himself, at that point, hey, I don't care how likable this guy is. He's in my doghouse. At that point, uh, there's gonna be a lot of people though that are, I mean, look how easy it is for people to get starstruck and stuff like that. Everybody's just people. And the Antichrist is gonna put on his pants one leg at a time too. But he's gonna have a little bit extra power once he gets the pants on. I will say that. But we've got the power of Christ literally living in us, and when we walk with God in His will, Jesus in us, and having the Spirit leading us, what has the Antichrist got on that, right? But he will be able to persecute the woman and make war with God's people for a time. There's going to be a conflict, and well, we're going to have to be ready for it. So. Okay. Hey, Partisan Gorilla, there's never a problem with asking questions, so. Okay. Mm. Oh, so EC Tech Treasures asked, I wonder if the Pope declaring motu proprio, I probably butchered the guy's name, and the Treasury direct accounts are part of the mark of the beast. Any thoughts? I haven't been keeping up with the Pope at all. I don't care for the man. I don't like the things he has to say about my Jesus. Uh, I get offended by the dude often, so I've X'd him out of my life, basically. Sorry. But I didn't know he had. It's important. They're important power. Rome is important power players, and I think it's critically important to pay attention to what's going on over there. But I have not for a while, so I didn't know he had declared any new Treasury direct accounts or motu proprio. I have no idea who that guy is, so I haven't been keeping up with anything having to do with the Pope or the Vatican or any of that stuff. So I have no thoughts. EC Tech Treasures. I don't think I personally probably want to save a lot of this for Matthew 24 when we get there. I think that we'll have I don't really know the word for it. I don't want to fearmonger or anything like that. I think we'll have a collapse of some sort um, before a mark of the beast or the Antichrist. We see certain systems being put in place that could effectively turn into a mark of the beast at some point. but we're not even really sure what the mark of the beast is. The same word that's used in the Bible for mark of the beast, specific references in the scriptures, it's the same word they would use for a brand or a tattoo. So the brand or tattoo of the beast, is it a literal 666? It says it's a calculation and calculate the name or the number of his name. I wouldn't say it's quite, I mean, it is kind of vague, but it's not very clear specifically directly what the mark is. All we know is that the mark, if you take it, if you don't take it, you can't buy or sell, which means to me we are told about a one world religion, one world political system, and a one world government, one world money, one world religion. Government, money, religion. Those three things, right? And Antichrist at one point is going to have power over all three. And the false prophet will be the head honcho of the religion. And I believe that the Antichrist will be over the money and the power politically, right? So, in order to have all three of those things coalesce together, I think you'll basically have to have a collapse of some sort, somewhere, of some kind that would be epic, literally biblical, right? Proportion. How that would play out, there's a million scenarios I could think of strategically how it could play out. So it doesn't really do good to speculate, but it is good to be prepared, right, for case scenarios. But there's no way to be completely prepared for all of them unless you're with God, right? That's the only way to truly be prepared is to prepare with God. But the money system is too complex right now for everybody in the world to be mandatorily made to participate in one economic system. It's right now it's impossible. Right now at this moment right here in time, right this very moment, it's not logistically possible to do that. There's places in the world where people haven't even had contact with modern civilization, right? So getting them to buy and sell with to even understand the concept of currency. I mean, really, if you asked a normal person on the street what is money, I don't think you would get one. I don't think you would get one accurate definition of what money is from anybody. Without Google or Webster's dictionary or whatever, I doubt a single person in this chat. I doubt I could even give you an accurate definition of what money is. So getting the whole world to participate in one money, I don't see that happening anytime soon. You definitely have to have digital measurements of some sort. I mean, the money system we have right now has numbers that are supposed to represent items. And those items, we just, for United States, we have pieces of paper we call dollars, right? Those dollars are supposed to represent money somewhere. Okay, well, we know now with the economic system we run, there is no item somewhere to represent that piece of paper that's supposed to represent that money. So we're using money that represents a number that's supposed to represent a thing, but there is no thing anymore actually there. We have more numbers than we do have paper that we can have enough pieces of paper to match the numbers of numbers that all represent no item that is actually not there. I just want to stop and be quiet for a second and just see. It might have sounded like double talk, but did y'all just understand what I just said? I don't even know if I understand what I just said, but I know it makes sense. Think about it. Just for a second, just wrap your mind around that. I'm going to do an experiment real quick, right? I'm going to do an experiment with the chat group real quick. This should be pretty funny. Wow. Okay, here we go. Um, Sorry, I'm give me just a second to set this up. Just think about money is a very abstract concept. And when you look at dollars, okay, so it, just an understanding of numbers, right? We don't have enough pieces of paper in the world to match the numbers that are supposed to be valuing things that aren't even there. Like the emperor has no clothes, guys. That's what I'm saying. Wow, I can't even find it. I can't even find it how to lay this out. Come on, man. Okay, I'm almost there. And this is way more difficult than I thought it should be. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Sweet Lord. Okay, here we go. This is as of January of this year. I believe it's as of January this year. Yeah, I can't even do it myself. This is nuts. Um, I just want to see it. Team. This is crazy. Yeah, this is a lot more difficult than I thought, so I'm gonna give you guys a hard time here in just a second. Oh, this is making my brain hurt. It's too early for math. um, oh wait, that was a year off, so come on, man. Hang on. Here we go. There we go. I got you, buddy. Gotcha. All right, here we are. About dang time, right? Hey, good night, Mia. I'm about to pray us out here in a minute, so you're not gonna miss too much. Okay, here you go. Here's the number. Can anybody read that number? Can anybody read that number? That's what I want to know. Can you read that number? Matthew 23. Yeah, exactly. Money represents itself now. It's become its own thing. If only money could self-replicate, right? Um, yeah, Gerard, money is nothing else as a medium, right? More money, more problems for sure, man. Living a lie knowingly, giving false hope to an object which we know has no value, and understand it rules our lives. Money is a construct to control us all. There ain't no more gold, man. There hadn't been no gold in a long time. I saw this documentary where they like went to Fort Knox and were like, "Where's the gold?" And they're like, there hadn't been any gold in here since 1976. You guys like, where's the gold? Like, we don't know. We thought you guys had it. It's really weird, right? Yeah. So yeah, that number I put up there, it's 19, comma 846, comma 342, comma 893, comma 093. It's 19,846,342,893,093 is our national debt for the United States. 19,846,342,893,093. I have my niece at my house. We got this thing in the mail for Obama's second term, right? And it got that, like, this card. It comes in and it's got the national debt on it, and it was, a few trillion lower than that. But I had the card, and I had my little niece, right? And I was like, hey, can you read this number? And she gets about 4 numbers in. It's like, no. Hands it back to me. I asked my older niece, right? A couple years older than her. And I was like, hey, can you read this number? And she's about 5 or 6 numbers in. It's like, no. And then I get it, and I hand it to my sister, who's, a year and a half younger than me. And she gets about, I don't won't say how many numbers in. She got in there and was like, what the hell? And I was like, exactly. This is a number. I can't even fathom that, right? Like, that number is unfathomable for me. I can't even fathom that number. And yeah, that's a trillion. There's quadrillion beyond that. There's quintillion beyond that. I mean, they got a billion is a million, I think, right? So you got 100 million, 2, 3, 4, 5, 900 million. Okay, when you get to that 100 million, that's what a billion is. When you get a billion, you get it at 10 billion, 100 billion. Once you get to 100 billion, then you move into trillion. But even to add a new trillion, you still have to go through all those billions. Another one round of that to get back to it. I mean, I can't wrap my mind around that number. Like, I'd be happy with the $93, right? You throw 893,000 on top of that, plus the 342 million on top of that, 846 billion on top of that, plus 19 trillion on top of that, and that's all one freaking number. All that is one thing. That's nuts. So you want to talk about money? Money? The end has to come, but how are we all going to understand that, where everyone has to do that all together in one unison, right? Well, without that, you can't buy or sell, right? And that's just one allotment and a portion that is the United States debt. That's what we spent that we don't have. Who spent it, right? Where did it go? Yeah, at some point it's going to turn into pi. 3.14 never ends, right? It just goes on and on and on. Stop the press, right? No, we can't stop the press. We got to go on for eternity to keep up with these numbers over here. I can't even, like, I'm at a loss for words when I even try to think about how to, like, put that. But 1,000 million is a billion, right? 1,000 million is a billion. So 1,000 million is a billion, and 1,000 billions is a trillion, and you got 19. What is it? 19,000 billion millions? I mean, I can't even fathom this, right? Oh, it does have an end? Wow. That's new to me. Whoa. Okay, so now the end is coming. If they found the end of pi, all right, that's a quantum, that's a Mandela effect, right? They found the end of the ripple in time. Now they're unrippling it. That's crazy. So, Ginny asked, where is all the missing Pentagon money, or where's all the missing money that the Pentagon said from September 10th, 2001? I forget how many billions of dollars it was, but it magically went missing. Then 9/11 happened, and everybody forgot about it. They even said they don't know where it went, too, when they investigated. But I'll tell you where I think it went. Me and a friend of mine did some research on the topic specifically, and we can't prove it, but there's some suggestive evidence. I believe that the money that was taken out of the United States, I think, was funneled through black channels and was 2 trillion. Okay, I think that that money is what they used because you got to think of the timing. Um, in 2001, that's before 2008 and 2012. In 8, you had a financial crash, and 12, you had a crash. So this precipitates the crash. If you were going to create a crash, where would you move your money to make it safe? You'd move it somewhere else, right? Okay, well, you would move it somewhere that's not going to be affected by the upcoming moves. Were they thinking this far ahead when they moved that money then? Possibly, but I think that there's a bigger agenda going on than just a couple fat cats trying to get rich, making policy that's going to line their own pockets. I think there is a lot of that going on, but the bigger picture is these guys work together. What are they working towards? Well, that's what we're talking about. We're looking at end times. Well, end times tells us we're going to have a one world government. Okay, we're going to have a one world money, and we're going to have a one world religion. Well, the best business in the world is religion. So money and religion go hand in hand in this worldly system. Okay, to control a government, you use religion also for most cases. So you use a government to control the money. Money controls the government. The religion brings in the money. The government controls the money, and the religion controls. I'm confused now. Basically, the church brings in the money. The government tells. The government decides what to do with the money, and then the religion tells the government what it can and can't do. So you have this three-ring circus, basically. So if you want to look at the religion over here and feel good, okay, well, you'll bring in the money for us to make it where we can pay our way to make it feel good. They're going to make everything feel good. The government's going to feel good. The religion's going to feel good. And the money system, well, you just can't get by without it, right? Um, Organized religion was the first government. So, yeah, I mean, there you go, basically. I mean, um, yeah, and there's definitely more going on with Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies. There's a lot of things going on economically, and that to me is following the money is just a beginning of the trail, not an end, right? They always say follow the money. Well, when you follow the money, it takes you to a place where you have to ask different kinds of questions to get any answers at all. Um, So all of this led to like the mark of the beast and the Vatican having that new guy come in. I don't know about all that, but I believe to get everybody on a standardized global money system, you're going to have to simplify it. It's way too complicated right now. There's numbers that represent nothing. There's credit that represents nothing. And there is the ability to make money and pay money, but this, man, it's so complicated, but it's very simple. Currency's fraud. I mean, you can label it and call it all these ways, but it's the status quo is the system that works. It's what's always worked, except for when you don't have somebody over controlling. And if people, that's the problem is everybody wants to be controlled ultimately, right? Yeah, computational mass, or for what Bitcoin is. Yeah, I understood that, but mm, for me, by the time we get to the end times, there's not going to be much of a difference between the political system, the religious system, and the money system, is what I'm saying, I guess. It's the simplest way I could summarize. Um, and we see that beginning to take place. I'm okay, you're okay, as long as you're not believing in Jesus and telling me I have to do something different. Right? So you can be for Allah and cut people's heads off and tell people about Sharia law all day and, you know, halal and make no one can carry pork products because I have to have halal. You can have all of that bending over backwards to make sure you get your 5 prayers a day in the middle of school, but I can't have an after school prayer group for Jesus. Like the disparity between this, you know, there's supposed to be equal opportunity. and it's not equal, and the opportunities are getting greater for what once were minorities are now majorities. And that's why I don't really like the way that it goes. But when you start to look at this, as long as you're not believing in Christ, everything's okay. Basically, is what I see in the world. Hey, it's okay to change. I mean, look at a place like London. How long has London and England been English? Or yet there's parts of England that English people can't even go in their own country, in their own city, to their own place because they might get dealt with. I mean, when you have a British soldier getting his own head cut off on British soil next to a British military base, that's a sign of the times, guys. When you have in the United States of America having places that are actually considering and majority rule and voting in Sharia law, it's a sign of the times, guys. Uh, so, I mean, like, if they can cater to that butchery, of course, still no one will ever support beheading of that nature until we get to a point where if you don't take that mark, well, then, hey, if you're on the global system and you're down with them, well, it's probably going to be pretty entertaining to see those people that don't want to get with the program get their heads cut off. I mean, that's like Roman style, are you not entertained? And that's what it's coming to. The martyrs for God will be beheaded. It doesn't say how, but some people say guillotines. It's happened before. I mean, history tends to repeat itself, right? So just imagine this. Instead of like a French Revolution where they take the elites and take off their heads and replace them, with a government of the people, think about the opposite thing happening, because that's what's going to happen. The elites are now running the world, and rather than the people overthrowing the elites, the people and the elites are going to overthrow the people. Just think about it. The people are going to work with the elites to overthrow the undesirable people. And the only undesirable people in an all desirable world are the ones that are trying to get you to change or be better or do right. Think about it, right? You're going to have non-believers in lockstep helping to persecute believers. You think about like the dystopian movies you see about the future when it's the little kids policing the parents. Not much different than what we're being geared towards right now, especially in public school. So if you think about it, right, when you put these things together, it's just like an onion. A lot of people don't see that the LGBT agenda is attached to the political agenda, is attached to the money agenda, is attached to the religious agenda, is attached to everything. It's all connected, right? But if you're looking at one agenda with the social revolution movement or, trying to stand up for your rights, while you're busy focused on one front, battlefront, right? They're getting you on the other side or the other side or the other side. It's literally like a hydra. You can't cut one head off without two or three more growing up in its place. Or it's like whack-a-mole, man. Every time you whack one over here, another one pops out over there, and they don't go anywhere. You can't kill money, right? You can't kill the idea, and that's all most of these things are, is ideas that people get behind and support. So I don't know. I could talk about this for another few hours, but if that's the case, we might as well have just read Matthew 24. So I will save a little bit for next time, but okay, beheading by guillotine, homicide, 99.9, legal execution. I'll have to check that out. There's a few end times people claim to be people of God. And when people claim Jesus Christ and claim faith, I usually give them the benefit of a doubt. And there's a guy who's had a prophetic dream. I'm not big on prophetic dreams at all because there's no way to really discern if it's truly a prophetic dream or not until it plays out. And usually I believe that if it's a prophetic dream, If it's a big enough one that people need to know about and should be shared and made public, it's probably one of those ones that has to have 2 or 3 witnesses confirm it also. 3 times on Matthew 24. If y'all want to get brushed up on it, I already covered Matthew 24 a while back ago, and it's a long live stream also. And there's also another one where I go into a lot more detail about money and the world economic system. And there's been a lot that's happened in the global economy since then. So, but it's dinar, it's what's, or money, it's what's for dinar, I think is what it's called. But it is a lot like onions for sure. But oh, 3 chat minimums. The octopus monster. But yeah, I think the end is here, not just near, right? I'll put it that way. But I think we have not as much time as a lot of people complacently feel we have. But I don't think that we necessarily have as little time as a lot of us are concerned that we are working with, right? So I think we're in an area where it depends on how the next few current events unfold before we can say, hey, it's balls to the wall right now, or it's a slow simmer working its way up to a boil, right? It's not boiling yet, but it's been heating up for a long time, and it's definitely started to simmer. I don't know. I'm excited to see what happens, but it makes me nervous. So to finish what I was saying earlier, so we can end, was I believe there will have to be a collapse of some sort before they usher in a mark of the beast, right? And I believe the Antichrist has to be revealed before the mark of the beast is even an option. That's left out a lot of times. So the mark of the beast is going to be the mark for the Antichrist, right? And so he has to be there to be able to give you the mark. They might be able to usher in the platforms and get everything ready, so all you have to do is pull the trigger at the end. I mean, figuratively speaking. But I think it's just keep your eye on Jesus, be right and ready with him, follow the best you can what he has for you to do his work, and don't focus so much about the enemy. But don't be ignorant either to the devices. And I try to keep and find and offer help to get to the balance between understanding and knowing the enemy, but keeping your mind focused on God. It's a delicate balance because the dark side is very interesting and can draw you in, and God's very interesting and can draw you in. And if you go too far into the dark side, you can, your relationship with God can suffer for it, or your effectiveness in being able to do for others, serving Him by serving others, can also be limited. So I think it's important not to go too far into that area of study and interest. But I've also seen that there are people that get too on fire for God, and I don't really like using that term, because to say somebody's too on fire for God would make it seem like I'm not for people being on fire for God, and I am. But we have to be careful not to be overzealous, right? Yeah, Truth Freeze, you put it the best right there, quoting scripture. Be wise as serpent, yet harmless as doves, right? There's a lot of people that want to be wise as serpents, but almost become a serpent themselves, seeking that wisdom, right, to know the enemy. And then there's those that come as the dove and that are coming to offer people peace, but they're doing it in harmful ways. So you have to be wise as the serpent, but harmless as the dove. There are people coming as doves, but spitting out truthful venom, right? And then you've got venomous serpents that are trying to get you to embrace the venom as well. So it's a delicate balance between knowing your enemy and knowing God well enough to know how to keep things. Be zealous, be passionate, be all the things, right, that you feel for, but you also have to be in command and control to a point to where you can submit. Hey, kitty. You have to be able to, if you're not in control of yourself, then you're not completely submitted to God. Does that make sense? It be measured is a good way to put it. Holy is what we're striving for, but I'm talking about, I've been there myself. I've been overzealous where I thought that I've got the truth. I need everybody to get this. I'm going to pound it into them no matter what it takes. If it's up to me, nobody's going to hell, right? And so I'm just going to come and I'm going to hit them with the baseball bat of truth until they get the black eye of salvation, right? And that's not how it works. Or you can be so on fire for God that you weird people out, right? Do you want to weird people out? Or do you think God is effectively telling you, go out, my son, and weird people out so that they may consider the Father that is in heaven, right? Yeah, zeal can be blind, and so that's why I refer to it as being overzealous, right? It's great to be zealous, but I don't think it's great to be so zealous that you're overzealous. When you're too on fire for God, you might burn yourself or you might start a wildfire that burns good things down, right? And sometimes it comes in pride, sometimes it comes in excitement, sometimes it comes in deception, right? I might have been deceived that I had a moment with God, and it might have been a moment with the enemy, right? Pretending. And it is hard to stay calm when on fire. So that's what I mean about it being a delicate balance. So I really agree with what y'all are offering in the chat there because it's helping me stay clearly on point with what I'm trying to say. And I think we all understand. So be on fire for God, but be on fire with God. Don't let that fire burn you because they have backfires, right? You have a wildfire coming one way, you can set your fire to go that way. They meet each other in the middle and burn each other out. That's what happens sometimes is if you come too much with the fire, that fire might go and hit somebody else's fire and then it burns out. And then what? You feel dejected. You might feel like you're questioning your faith. You might start doubting yourself. You might wonder, well, if that was the enemy tricking me, what other things has the enemy tricked me about? I think that's where you need support. You need help, and you need people you could trust that will help steer you, right? When you start maybe getting manic or getting too excited for God in a way to where it's affecting your ability to be effective in sharing God, right? If you're so excited and passionate for God that you get so weird that nobody wants to talk to you, I've been there. I've been that guy, right? Uh, you're not going to be very effective in what you have to offer, right? You might have all of the truth in the world to offer, but if you can't package it and present it and meet someone where they're at enough to where they can digest what it is you're spitting out, it's not going to do much good. So, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. Um, Sometimes, what is his plan, Red? Because I might agree with you to an extent. I think God has a plan no matter what happens because we make the choices along the way. I think that we limit God's opportunities and options. So I think that if we're so far gone that we get to a point to where creating damage, I don't think it's God's will that we go damage anybody. All right, intentionally or unintentionally. I don't think it's God's will that anybody get damaged. But I don't know. I can't say that for any certainty. Fathers, do not exasperate your children so that they will not lose heart. Yeah, so that's scripture of exactly what I was saying. Um, God will stretch you to grow you, but he won't stretch you to break you, right? He'll bend you to his will, but he won't break you to obedience. Obedience is up to you and your will. So there has to be a balance to be struck. Um, I'll give Red just a second if he's typing to clarify, because I am a little curious what DC said, plant the seed, don't pound it. And that's a great way to put it. If you plant a seed too deep, it can kill the seed. If you don't treat the seed properly, it can kill the seed before it has a chance to grow. If you overwater a seed, it can drown. If you don't water the seed, it can dry up. So the seed is an important concept because it's very relevant to us all, right? We're all gardens of the mind, gardens of the spirit or soul, right? And so as the seeds are planted, if you're the person like Johnny Appleseed out there, just like throwing a seed here, a seed there, and next thing you know, you got a whole country full of apple trees, that's great. But if you're over there like, you're like just throwing seeds and throwing seeds and throwing seeds and throwing seeds, it's like, it's inefficient. If you throw, let's say, 19 trillion seeds in one spot, maybe only some of them are going to grow. If you had planted all 19 trillion seeds in 19 trillion strategic locations, maybe you would have had 19 trillion seeds grow instead of just a few, right? Um, I think I'm all analogied out tonight, guys. um, yeah, Alice said the Lord has to till the soil to prepare it to receive the seed. Um, we know God brings the increase and one plants and another waters. I usually say that we're the ones that have to prepare our garden or our soil. And if our soil is not prepared, or somebody else's isn't, but maybe it is God that does the tilling. Not really sure. That's a good. I never heard it put that way before, Alice. So I'm gonna have to think on that. Oh, just being a God weirdo that no one wants to talk to you. Well, no, yeah. Now I understand what you mean, Red. Yeah, that might be the will for some people. Definitely has been the case for me. Not that no one wanted to talk to me, but whenever they get me talking, maybe they wish they hadn't. That's probably the way I've seen it more often than not. And some of that's my own character. Uh, that's who I am, really, the way I talk. But sometimes it's who I am that's annoying. Sometimes it's the information, right? And I couldn't tell you definitively one way or the other in most cases, but I think being the weirdo for God that no one wants to talk to, like, if you're gonna follow God, expect to be isolated to an extent. And if you're spitting truth that's real, expect to be not popular for that real truth and real talk. If you're talking about real things in real life around people that are living a shallow and superficial life, and they call that reality, if you're around people who watch reality TV and think that it's real, and that's what they think reality is, that ought to be your clue right there, right? So, of course, they're not going to want to hang out with the person that fears the Lord. They're not going to talk to the person that talks about the Bible. They're not going to want to hear from someone who thinks that, hey, there could be an end of that reality for them, right? So that to me, it would be an honor um, to be able to be following God well enough to where the world automatically singles you out as like which one of them doesn't belong. Well, if you're following God, it should be pretty clear at times to say in this situation, uh, this is the world, right? And that person right there doesn't belong. They're in the world, but that person is not of it, and they need to go. That's how it's gonna be, right? Um, yeah, Jennifer said, when I ask a friend to understand, I'm not preaching to them, but I'm talking about it because it's such a big priority in my daily life. God etiquette, we must get with it. Yes, I agree with how you approach. You usually, I mean, it's just like everything else in life. You want to meet somebody where they're at. People will be interested to hear what you have to say when you say something that's interesting to them, not that's interesting to you. I get excited about really weird things, and I have a hard time. Someone just cut you off from my live stream. That's weird. I don't understand. I have a hard time. I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, I have a. Come on, Timmy, focus, man. That is a good thought. Truth. Um, I don't know. Just meeting people where they're at. I get interested about really weird things, and I have a hard time finding an ability to share that interest. Right? If I get excited about a really weird thing and I go to share it, and I tell somebody, "Hey, blah 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 blah," and then they look at you like, "Oh, that's nice," and then go on about the regular thing. And I'm just like, no, right. Like I like will explain it all over again, thinking maybe they'll get it this time, right? And it's like one of those things you just had to be there at the end, I guess. You look at it like that. I guess you just had to be there. That's I can't expect everybody else to be interested in things I'm interested in. And that's how it is with God. Like I'm interested in Jesus and God and the Bible and stuff. It's not the only thing I think about though. Like so when I go to share it with people, it's like, yeah, this is I would if I find something new out, I have wow. Like I like bonsai trees. If I am into something with bonsai and I find something new and cool out, I'm not going to call my buddy that loves cars and tell him about my new bonsai thing I found out, right? Or if I find out something I like about cars, I'm not going to call my baseball friend who doesn't even like cars and tell him, "Hey man, check out this car thing I got." If I'm going to talk cars, I talk to my car friend about cars. If I'm going to talk about baseball, I talk to my baseball friend about baseball. Uh, But you have to be able to talk about God with anybody. The problem is that they're not going to want to hear about it because you find it interesting. You're going to have to find something that they see as being interesting and give them what is interesting so that it feeds their interest and curiosity. Then they'll want to know more, right? When we represent Christ, they see Christ in us. If I try to present Christ to them, they don't want that presentation. They don't want me to sit there and tell them how they need to have their cups so clean, right? And mine's looking shiny on the outside, but it's really dirty on the inside. It's what Jesus was talking about in the whole chapter, right? He doesn't want people to just be going out there telling everybody else what they need to do, taking this big burden that's impossible to do and throwing it on their shoulders while I'm sitting over here not lifting a finger, but I'm talking a good game, right? They want people that actually are believing it, saying it, and doing it. And when you believe it, say it, and do it, automatically puts you on the outside. Automatically. Flat Earth, we talked about it at the beginning. You can use Flat Earth as an entry point if somebody's even interested to talk about the shape of the Earth. I'm a science nerd since I was a kid. I have a hard time finding anybody that even cares about science. When everybody believed the Earth was a sphere, I couldn't talk to anybody about the sphere of the Earth and space and stuff. Nobody cared. All of a sudden now people care. They might care now because there can't be space with the flat Earth model, right? I don't know. Oh, that's a good point too. Yeah, we need some sacred sound of silence, right? I know some people that if you try and use flat Earth to talk to them about God, then that's one of the main reasons why they don't believe in God. No lie, right? Well, science is why I can't believe in God and have faith, right? But then you go talk to them about some science, and it's like, okay, well, you don't know science very well. And a lot of people trying to talk scientifically don't know a lot of science and are talking out of both sides of their mouth. I think as long as we're not just parroting what other people are saying, or as long as we're not just regurgitating other things we've heard, as long as we're actually looking into what it is that we're interested in, as long as we're actually studying, right? Well, then you can share your information, and we're all entitled to our own opinions and interpretations of information. When it comes to scripture, though, not so much. There's not much wiggle room, right? Um, it's all about balance, right? I don't know. I guess the hardest part is figuring out where we're at, so we can know how to figure out where other people are at, so we can know how to meet in the middle. So that's why I think know thyself is probably the key to this all. I don't know your heart. I can't judge you anyways. Um, I need to know myself and hold myself accountable, and from that point, I can move forward, right? So that would be illogical. I am pretty logical, I guess, but oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I think I heard about that. Yeah, faith is the belief in the things unseen. Right? If you could prove something, it wouldn't be faith. It would be known. Um, do you even science, bro? Well, I science, but not till after I have faith, right? I think that's all I'm gonna say. I'm ready to go to bed. I got to be up in 2 hours to go do something else, but oh my. Okay, cool. So I think we're all set. I guess I'll ask. So we got a few minutes before, if we want to end on an even note. But hey, Timmy, we're not going just yet. I'm gonna pray us out in just a minute, but I'm gonna also ask if anyone has any questions. I usually like to ask that before we go. I know we've got a few prayer requests to cover. I'll try not to forget. And I don't usually when I have question and answer, I'll go off on an answer for half an hour like I did a minute ago, but not this time. It's gonna be quick answers if anyone even has any questions. So we should have a debate on flat Earth. I think it would be an interesting debate. I think it would be interesting. I mean, you and me have discussed it many times over to no avail for either one of us to further our understanding. Uh, I'm not ready to jump in flat Earth ring yet. That's how I feel about it, and yeah, not fight now, but for future purposes. So, last call for any questions. Last call. Uh, Alice, you can call me anything you want. Just don't call me Shirley. Where's the gold at, man? Oh yeah, I didn't answer. I didn't finish answering that question. Um, I believe the gold from 2001 was funneled to the World Bank, right? And I think a lot of the World Bank was what precipitated the European Union um, financial situation, right? And it's been a long, drawn out process, and a lot of it's centered around Greece and Cyprus. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that, but I'll just say that I think some of that money for 9/11, and there's another round of money that's gone missing since then, two different ones, right? And so the first round that went missing, I think, went to, um, well, it went to a lot of things really, but it was to set up economic structures elsewhere, if that makes sense, right? So what ended up happening, I think, is they funneled the money out of the United States, and I think a lot of it went to the Arab Spring for one, and I think a lot of it also went to the European Union's financial woes in Greece. I think a lot of it was to shore up some of that, but also to leverage, maybe even extort people into a more unionized currency system. So you got the global bank and the World Trade Organization, the IMF, and you have the Federal Reserve, and they're all different institutions, but they function similarly. So I think when you start to look at how these things have moved, and you look at not where it went, but look at what happened in the area, right? So when you see this money disappears from over here, you see us take a big hit in 2001 where they knew it was coming. So you move it somewhere else where it goes up, right? You get somebody else built up, then you move the money before that goes down somewhere else. You just keep moving the money around and affecting the places where it was. It's the same thing. Um, what's his name? Soros does. Soros moves his money into a country, has that country become dependent on his money. Then he takes that money out of the system collapses, then he puts in what he wants. And this is how it works, right? This is this is like the chess board on Star Trek where it's got like 3D and 3 layers, right? It's like one of those. It's not your average checkers game or chess game. Like it's a lot deeper and more complicated, but um, yeah, we can talk more about it later, but let's just say our money went to go build somebody else up so that when they tear us down, they've got a backup plan somewhere else. In the meantime, Russia, China, Brazil, India, and South Africa all got together and made their own version of the same thing. So now you've got the BRICS banking system in opposition to the World Bank, in opposition to the Federal Reserve, right? So you got 3 different economic systems running the world, but they don't function well together. That's not even bringing in oil and petrodollar and all that stuff. So won't go there. But let's just say the money ain't here, bro. It hadn't been here for a long time. They took our gold. They took our 9/11 money. They get you at the drive-through. They get you everywhere, man. All I can say is they're not getting us here other than a little bit of technical mumbo jumbo here and again, but we always have the recording for later. So I'm losing it too, to be honest. I don't know if I've been here all night, so Chase Bank. It reminds me of Die Hard. Didn't they have a Die Hard movie where they stole a whole bunch of money in New York from underground? Created a terror event to distract. Wow, kind of reminds me. It's like love your fellow man. Heed the quiet one's words. What is the name of that song? I should remember. My brain is not working. Anthem is the name of that song, by the way. So yeah, love your fellow man was the name of that for you there, John. So all right, that's everything. I think I'm ready to pray us out, and promise we'll be better next time. The Moondogs is the band name. The singer's name is Susan. Um, Love Your Fellow Man was the name of the. Anthem is the name of the song that the chorus says, Love Your Fellow Man. Okay. An HEB. I don't think they're getting any HEBs over here in Sweden, but maybe. That'd be cool. I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and pray us out, guys. Sorry if I'm cutting it a little short, but I don't know. My mind's blown. Tonight was good, and there was a lot more to, I think, focus on in 23. I'm glad that we didn't go straight into 24. I think 24 is enough by itself, but when we go into 24 and 25, I think we'll all be glad we didn't overload it. So it's been fun more than anything. No, don't worry, buddy. It's okay. HEB's rocks. Maybe we'll get a Bucky's over here. That'd be gangster. Let me make sure. I gotta look up Jennifer's mom's. Okay. There we go. Sorry, I'm looking for a name. I should have had it ready, but could just ask, but I don't want to ask out loud. Robert. There we go. Robert. All right, so Jennifer, thank you. I found it too little, too late, but all right, let's just go ahead and get it going. So, Heavenly Father, we just thank you tonight for this time that we've gotten to spend together. We've had fun with you and with each other. We thank you for opening your word to us so that it could hold a high value in our minds, not just in our hearts and in our faith and what we believe, but to unlock our understanding of it from our perspective. We just thank you for being able to provide an opportunity where you've preserved your word through time to where we can go back and we're basically time traveling. We're going back to the time when your son walked the earth, and I feel like when I read the scriptures, I'm walking it with him there. So thank you for giving me that opportunity to make your word come alive in my life. And thank you for helping me to read it, to stay diligent in doing that, and to help other people and take more interest in the scriptures and to be more interested in the stories and the humanity of the message that you left behind. And it's a love story. And we thank you for loving us first. And I'm just eternally grateful. But it's a hard life, to be honest, God, and you know that. You didn't create it to be that way, but we've made the bed for ourselves, and some of us are laying in beds we don't deserve. But life isn't fair, and God, we're not asking for life to be fair, but we're thankful that you are fair and that we have eternal life in you, and that no matter what unfair things or situations we could be in, no matter how bad the world can look at times, no matter how crappy our situations feel, God, we know that we're never truly alone. And for however long that feeling lasts or situation is there that we have to endure, we know that it pales in comparison to uh, forever, eternities. If I can't understand 19 trillion, I don't think I can understand eternity, God. I just humble myself to not knowing. I don't need to know how long eternity is to know that this life is going to be very short when I compare the two things. So I'm not asking for more pain and more obstacles, God, but life is hard. And I just ask you to be with me during my hard times. Be with the people that I love and care for during their hard times. Be our protector and go out before or in front of all of us and just be the protection that we need. But as Jesus is inside and we have invited him in, and we also have the Holy Spirit, we just ask for the internal protection to protect us from ourselves, from our thoughts and our feelings. Help protect us from taking actions that we might regret. Help us not to act out in the intoxication of our emotions, because emotions can be dangerous things. They can be great blessings too. So, God, we just pray and beg in the Spirit. We supplicate to you for balance. I need more balance in my life, and I need help to making that happen, God. Um, I just ask for more patience, more tenderness, more kindness. I have a lot of needs, God, and I don't often think to ask for help with them. And I don't know. I need help with that. I need help to be more efficient in how to communicate with you, Father. Um, I just ask that you help me decrease so that you can increase in my mind, in my heart, in my life. And I want to pray for everybody else too. My heart goes out really to Robert in particular and his family, Jennifer and her mother. It's a really tough situation. And I just ask for you to be there, God, during that difficult and hard time. The unknowns are, I don't even have a word for it. They're probably terrifying. Um, the potential risk of loss is probably terrifying. The limited time to take action is probably terrifying. Where eternity will be spent in doubt is probably terrifying. So God, I just ask that they begin to understand the fear of the Lord, and that the terror for any and all other things will be removed. God, that your mighty hand will come in and work of glory for grace and for your name's sake, Father. We just ask that you come in there and have your will be done. And many seeds have been planted, many waterings have taken place, God, but now is the critical time for increase. And for Robert and his fiance and Jennifer and everyone in the family, we beg you in the Spirit to be there and take swift action. But ultimately, that no matter what, your will be done, and that we can accept and stay faithful through the hard times, no matter what the outcomes may turn out to be. God, I just ask that you be with all of the warriors that are struggling in their battles against cancer. Anybody that has a chronic physical condition, God, I just ask that you lift them up and heal them. And in faith, we just claim all these things. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen. Oh, wow. God, I want to come back with the PS, please. For those that have lost, Michaela, I want to pray for Michaela losing her grandfather and the rest of the family members in that situation. I want to pray for all those that have lost or are going through the process of losing. And losing never goes away. But I don't know. I know a lot of people that have recently lost or they're in the process of losing right now. And Michaela having lost her granddad, that hurts me in my heart. So everybody that's lost, I just pray for them. God, I pray for everybody's hearts to be lifted up. I pray for those that were most close to the people that have been lost, that they be reinforced with purpose in life and to be able to focus on the good things that were worth remembering and to leave the negativity behind. I just pray for comfort and healing and all these things we proclaim in Jesus' name. Amen. That's the beginning of sorrows, guys. We'll read about that in Matthew 24, but I don't know. I'm pretty heavy-hearted right now, so I'm just going to play the song and end this bad boy. Thanks for being here, guys. I love you all. It really means a lot to see y'all in the chat or in the comments after. I'm just thankful that y'all are here. It gives me a reason to be here. And until next time, I guess I'll just say goodnight. I love y'all, and don't party too hard without me, right? So y'all take care, and I'll play an anthem next time. So until next time, this is Timio signing off. Here we go. All right, good night, guys. Take care. Skinny jeans. Yeah, yeah. All right, guys, y'all take care. Adios, mi amigos and amigas.